You've probably been told that a quiet mind is a reward for people who've fixed their lives. But tonight, I want to flip this belief upside down. What if your mind isn't noisy because you're broken, but because nobody ever taught you how to rest while life is still messy? What if deep sleep and inner peace aren't prizes at the end of the race, but tools you can use during the race? In this journey, I'm not going to ask you to escape your life. I'm going to walk with you right into it. Stories, fears, worries and all, and show you how Zen turns chaos into a cradle. You lay down at night, close your eyes, and your brain throws a party you weren't invited to. Old conversations replay, future disasters are rehearsed, and every regret decides to hold a meeting. You try to shut it all off, but your thoughts don't have an off button. Do they? Here's the strange truth. The more you fight your thoughts, the louder they get. Zen takes the opposite path. It doesn't tell you to fight your mind. It teaches you how to sit beside it. Not as an enemy, but as a friend you're finally learning to understand. This isn't going to be a lecture full of abstract concepts you forget tomorrow morning. For the next 3 hours, you'll walk through real stories, raw emotions, and honest human moments. Some might sound suspiciously like your own life in disguise. You'll meet people who carried anxiety like armor, who tried to control everything, who felt small, lost, or never enough. And you'll see, through their journeys, how one small shift in awareness can change the way they breathe, sleep, and live. You won't just hear Zen teachings, you'll feel them moving through real lives. We're going to challenge a lot of beliefs you've silently carried for years. Beliefs like, rest is a reward I have to earn, or I'll relax when everything is finally okay. Spoiler, everything will never be perfectly okay. And that's not a curse, it's a doorway. You'll hear why trying to control your emotions doesn't work, and why trying to fix yourself before you're allowed peace is a cruel myth. Instead, we'll explore how peace appears the moment you stop treating your heart like a problem. One story at a time, your nervous system will start to hear a new message. You're allowed to rest, even like this. Along the way, I'll share personal experiences, the nights I couldn't sleep, the seasons where life fell apart, times when Zen wasn't a pretty quote on a screen, but a rope I held onto in the dark. You'll see practices that were born not in perfect temples, but in cluttered rooms, crowded days, and noisy minds. We'll use simple analogies: a river, a guest house, an empty boat, a falling leaf, so even the deepest ideas feel soft and familiar. You won't need any special background, any spiritual label, or any belief system to follow along. Just a tired heart and a curious mind are enough. This journey will speak to the part of you that is exhausted from pretending. Pretending you're always fine. Pretending you're always strong. Pretending you're not scared of losing control. Here, you don't have to impress anyone, not even yourself. You'll be gently invited to drop the performance, layer by layer, breath by breath. As the stories unfold, you may catch yourself thinking, wait, that's me. That's how I react. That's how I run. Good. That recognition is not a problem. It's the first doorway to freedom, because you can't change a pattern you don't dare to see. By the end of this night, I don't promise that your life will be magically fixed, but I do promise you'll see it differently. And that changes everything. You'll understand why your thoughts spin the way they do, why your emotions crash in waves, why your body holds tension in certain places. You'll leave with concrete practices you can carry into tomorrow morning and every night after. Tools not just to sleep soundly, but to wake up joyful, even when nothing outside has changed yet. Because the real transformation begins not when the world becomes softer, but when your way of meeting the world becomes wiser. So, as you settle in, maybe under a blanket, maybe with dim lights, maybe with your eyes already heavy, consider this entire video a long, gentle conversation just between you and me. Each story is a hand on your shoulder, each teaching a quiet reminder that you're less alone than you think. Somewhere between your next breath and the last word of this journey, something in you may finally exhale in a way it hasn't in years. And who knows? As you drift into sleep, you might just discover that peace was never as far away as your mind made it seem. It was here, waiting, in the simple act of listening, feeling, and allowing yourself to be fully human. Right here, right now, tonight. Tonight, I want you to imagine that I'm sitting right beside your bed, not as a distant guru on a mountain, but as a friend who has also stared at the ceiling at 3 a.m. The room is dim, the noise of the day is finally fading, and it's just you, your breath, and this quiet story we're about to walk into together. You've done what you could today, whether you feel it was enough or not, and now life is inviting you into a different kind of practice. This is not the time to prove anything, fix everything, or win another invisible race that nobody is watching. This is the hour when even the busiest cities grow quiet, and your mind, stubborn as it is, starts asking for rest as well. So for a few minutes, let yourself believe that you don't have to carry the whole world on your shoulders. Right now, it's just you, this soft darkness, and a path into Zen that was made for your tired heart. Maybe your days have started to feel like a long corridor of notifications, demands, and small emergencies that never end. You lie down, turn off the light, but the corridor is still inside your head, full of voices saying, "You forgot this," or "You should have done that." It's almost funny, if you think about it, how your body is exhausted, but your mind suddenly decides it's the perfect time for a meeting. Zen doesn't try to shout over that meeting or force silence with willpower. Instead, it gently invites you to step out of the corridor and into a small inner room where nothing urgent is allowed to enter. That inner room is what we'll slowly build together tonight. One breath and one image at a time. And the beautiful part is that this room isn't new. It has been waiting for you for years. I remember a season of my own life when nights felt like punishment rather than rest. I would look at the clock, see 2:47 oi, me, and feel my chest tighten because I knew the alarm was marching closer. The more I begged for sleep, the further it seemed to run from me. Like a shy animal I kept chasing with heavy footsteps. I read articles, tried strange teas, counted imaginary sheep until they were all exhausted before I was. Nothing really changed until I stopped treating sleep as a task to complete and started seeing it as a guest to welcome. Zen entered my nights not as a magic trick, but as a different attitude toward the way my mind moved. And that shift, quiet and simple, changed much more than my schedule. Think of your mind right now like a snow globe that has been shaken all day long. Inside it, there are thoughts, worries, conversations, and unfinished to-do lists swirling like shiny particles. During the day, you almost don't notice the chaos because you're busy running from one thing to another. But at night, when everything outside finally stops, you suddenly see how much is still spinning inside. Zen doesn't ask you to smash the snow globe or throw it away. It just asks you to place it gently on the table. If you don't keep shaking it, The flakes slowly begin to fall on their own, without effort. Your role is not to control every flake, but to stop shaking the globe with fear and urgency. Now feel the weight of your body resting where you are, as if the bed were an old friend holding you without judgment. Notice how your back, your legs, your arms are supported, almost like a child being carried. All day long, your body carried you through tasks, traffic, screens, and conversations that sometimes drained you. Here, in this moment, the roles reverse. You don't have to carry the day anymore. The bed carries you. Zen often begins in the most simple and physical way, with this honest recognition of support. You don't need incense or a temple dome above your head, only this contact with gravity and softness. When your body understands that it is allowed to rest, the mind slowly receives permission to rest too. Let's start with something small and kind, your breath. You don't need to breathe correctly, because your body has been breathing since before you knew what breathing was. All we will do is notice it, like paying attention to a friend who has always been there, but was never really heard. Inhale gently through your nose, as if you were smelling something comforting and familiar. Exhale a little longer than you inhale, imagining that the breath leaves the body carrying tiny bits of tension with it. You don't have to count perfectly, but if you like, you can follow a simple rhythm. In for 4, out for 6. With every soft exhale, imagine that the day gets just a little more distant, like a town you left behind on a quiet train. Sleep, in many ways, is like a cat. If you chase it, clap your hands, and call its name desperately, it hides under the couch and stares at you suspiciously. But if you sit quietly, relaxed, doing something simple and calm, the cat eventually comes, chooses your lap, and curls up without asking permission. Zen doesn't teach you how to grab the cat. It teaches you how to become the kind of presence the cat trusts. That's what we're doing with your mind now, softening the edges so sleep feels safe to approach. No pressure, no competition, no, I must fall asleep right now or tomorrow is ruined. Just an honest willingness to sit quietly inside your own life and see what arrives. I want you to imagine your bed not as a battlefield where you fight insomnia, but as a small inner temple. In this temple, the rules are different from the ones outside your blankets. Here, nothing you did wrong today is allowed to enter without taking off its shoes of judgment at the door. Here, the voices of comparison and self-criticism have to whisper, and eventually they get tired and leave. This temple doesn't require fancy rituals, only sincerity and a bit of courage to be with yourself. Every time you lie down at night, you are walking back into this sacred space, even if no one else ever sees it. And slowly, as you visit it more consciously, the temple begins to feel more real than the noise you came from. Some people build a small ritual before sleep to help their minds understand that the temple is opening. It can be as simple as turning off bright lights and keeping only a warm, gentle glow in the room. You might decide that, 30 minutes before bed, the phone no longer deserves a front-row seat in your attention. Maybe you drink a cup of warm tea, not as a magic potion, but as a slow signal that the pace is changing. You could even stretch your body lightly, like a bow being unstrung after a long day of tension. These are not rules. They are offerings to your own nervous system, which has been on alert for hours. Every small, repeated signal tells your brain, "We are safe now. It's okay to lower the guards." One practice that helped me a lot was what I started calling emptying the backpack of the day. Before sleep, I would take a notebook and write down everything that was buzzing in my head. Ideas, worries, tasks, even silly thoughts that seemed unimportant, but refused to leave. It felt like taking off a heavy backpack and putting each item on the floor, saying, "I will carry you again tomorrow, but not tonight." Zen doesn't forbid planning. It just asks us not to drag the entire office into bed. You could do the same, even if it's just 3 lines capturing what's still open inside you. Once it's on paper, your mind doesn't need to grip it so tightly while you sleep. Maybe you've noticed that the most exhausting part of the night is not the lack of sleep, but the war you start with yourself. You replay conversations, judge every word you said, and imagine the worst reactions from others. You look back at the day as if you were a harsh teacher, grading your own test with a red pen. What if, just for tonight, you decided to be a kinder teacher, one who sees effort instead of only mistakes? In Zen, we do not deny responsibility, but we also don't forget our humanity. You are allowed to be an unfinished work, resting in the middle of a long journey. The night is not a court where you are sentenced. It is a place where the heart can heal in silence. I once mentored a young woman who hated going to bed because she felt the night was when all her failures woke up. She told me, "During the day, I can distract myself with work and noise, but at night, it's just me and my thoughts." We began to slowly change the story she told herself about the night, turning it from an enemy into an ally. Instead of asking, "What did I do wrong today?" I asked her to try, "What did I survive today?" Little by little, the night became a mirror of resilience rather than a list of accusations. Her sleep didn't transform in one magical evening, but the relationship with the darkness did. And when that relationship softened, sleep quietly slipped through the door she had kept locked for so long. There is a strange habit many of us share. We demand perfection from ourselves exactly when we are most tired. We lie in bed and suddenly expect our mind to be wise, calm, and totally under control. It's like asking a marathon runner, right after the finish line, to give a brilliant speech without catching their breath. Zen invites you to see that by nighttime, your inner runner is sweaty, shaky, and has every right to sit down. You don't need to resolve childhood issues and life purpose at 11:42 p.m. All you truly need in this moment is permission to not fix everything before closing your eyes. Ironically, it's this very permission that often unlocks deeper rest. As you lie here, you might notice a part of your mind trying to negotiate. If I relax now, will I be more productive tomorrow? This is the voice that has turned even rest into a kind of investment with expected returns. Zen smiles gently at that voice and doesn't fight it, but it also doesn't buy its logic. You were not born to become a perfect productivity machine that occasionally charges its battery. You are a living being with seasons, tides, and rhythms that do not follow spreadsheets. Sleep is not a reward you earn only if the day went well. It is a basic kindness toward your own existence. And when you treat it as kindness instead of currency, the heart begins to soften in ways that numbers can't measure. If you pay attention, you'll notice that the night has its own kind of music. There are sounds that never appear in the daytime. The distant hum of a fridge, a car passing slowly, an occasional dog barking at a mystery only it can see. For most of your life, these sounds were just background noise, unnoticed and uninvited. Tonight, you can treat them as part of the orchestra of your rest, not as interruptions. Zen is very simple in that way. It says, "Let everything belong," instead of "make everything disappear." The more you allow small sounds, small sensations, and small thoughts to exist without fighting them, the less they disturb you. They are just parts of the night doing what they always do, while you learn a new way of listening. You might be thinking, This all sounds nice, but my mind is still busy, and my body is still tense. That's okay. Zen is not a switch you flip. It's more like a dimmer slowly turning down the brightness. Even as you listen now, something in you is already shifting, even if you don't feel it clearly yet. Every tiny moment of noticing your breath instead of following a thought is like placing one more stone in the foundation of your inner temple. No stone seems impressive on its own, but together they hold the weight of an entire sanctuary. Tonight is not about finishing construction. It's about laying a few honest stones with care. Tomorrow night, and the next, you'll find this foundation waiting for you a little stronger each time. There will come a point in this journey where you won't remember the exact words I'm saying anymore. Your mind will drift, the story will blur, and sentences will blend into the gentle fog of sleep. That is not a failure of attention. That is the goal quietly arriving. Zen teachings for sleep are like a friend who keeps talking softly until your worries forget you're listening. The moment you stop tracking every phrase is the moment your deeper self takes over the process. You don't need to follow along perfectly to benefit from this. Your nervous system is hearing what it needs. So if you fade in and out, know that this too is part of the practice. Soon, we'll begin to look at the night itself through Zen eyes, as something sacred instead of scary. We'll walk into stories that show you how darkness has always been a friend to those who learn to sit with it. You'll see how rest is not the opposite of growth, but the secret soil where growth takes root. For now, let this first step be enough. You arrived, you listened, and you allowed yourself to breathe a little deeper. Perhaps the idea of an inner temple is already starting to feel less abstract and more like a place your heart recognizes. You don't have to rush to the next lesson. The path will unfold at the rhythm of your own breath. But when you're ready, we'll gently open another door together, and the night will start to look very different from the inside. At some point in life, almost everyone starts to see the night as an enemy. You know that feeling, right? The clock hits a certain hour, and your body whispers, "Finally," but your mind says, "Not yet. We still have things to worry about." Daytime becomes the supposedly normal time, and the night turns into this strange territory where fears, doubts, and regrets wake up. It's like the sun goes down and suddenly your own thoughts get louder, as if they've been waiting backstage all day. Zen looks at this very differently and gently flips the script. Instead of seeing night as a battlefield, it sees night as a secret garden where the deepest healing can happen. And once you start to feel that, the dark hours stop being so scary and start to feel strangely sacred. Imagine your day as a busy marketplace, full of people shouting prices, bargaining, rushing in all directions. That's your mind from morning to evening, always reacting, buying ideas, selling energy, trying not to lose anything important. Now imagine that, a few streets away, there is a small monastery hidden behind a simple wooden gate. Inside, the same world exists, but the pace is slower, the voices are softer, and you can finally hear your own footsteps. For Zen, night is exactly that monastery, built inside the same city of your life. Most people never walk through its gate. They just bring the marketplace noise into their bed. But the moment you see that a monastery exists at all, you already have a different way to cross the night. I remember one retreat where this difference became crystal clear to me. During the day, the temple was full of activity. People cooking, cleaning, meditating, asking questions. But at night, something almost magical happened, even though nothing special took place. The hallways got quieter, the air felt thicker, and the sound of sandals on old wooden floors echoed like a soft drum. We didn't get new teachings at night, no big speeches, no fireworks of wisdom. We just shared the darkness with simple sounds, a door sliding, a kettle humming, distant chanting fading into silence. And yet, those nights taught me more about peace than many books I had read before. The funny thing is, the outside world didn't change at all when the sun went down. The same trees stood in the courtyard. The same walls surrounded the temple. The same sky stretched above us. What changed was the invitation that the night carried, like a note slipped under the door of your awareness. It said, "You've done enough for today. Now it's time to be, not to perform." That's the invitation your own nights quietly offer, even in a small apartment or a busy city. You don't need a physical monastery when you realize the night itself is trying to play that role for you. Zen is simply the art of accepting that invitation instead of pretending you didn't hear it. The problem is that most of us bring the marketplace mindset into the monastery of the night. We lie down and still act as if we are in the middle of a negotiation, trying to close deals with our past and future. You replay that awkward conversation, renegotiate decisions, and argue with people who aren't even in the room. It's like sitting inside a quiet temple and opening a loud street market on the floor, right between the cushions. No wonder sleep feels so far away. The temple is there, but we've filled it with stalls and noise. Zen doesn't shame you for this. It just shows you that you're allowed to close those stalls at night. You're allowed to let the marketplace rest without going bankrupt as a human being. Think about how we talk about nights in everyday life. I've got to survive tonight. I hate nighttime. Night makes everything worse. These phrases slowly teach your nervous system to expect danger every time the sun sets. Your body starts to associate darkness with threat, even when you're lying in a safe bed. Zen invites you to build a new vocabulary, a new story about what night means. Instead of, "I have to survive another night," it becomes, "I am entering my inner temple." Instead of, "Night makes everything worse," it becomes, "Night reveals what I didn't hear during the noise of the day." Little by little, your biology starts listening to the story you tell about the dark. One very practical thing you can do is treat the first minutes of night like a sacred transition, not a random blur. Most people go from bright screen to bed in less than 5 minutes, as if sprinting from a concert into a meditation hall. No wonder the mind feels shocked and confused, like someone flipped the lights off in the middle of a conversation. What if, instead, you gave yourself a small bridge between day and night? Maybe you dim the lights, speak more softly, walk slower, as if you were entering a library you respect. In Zen temples, the way people move at night is different, more deliberate, more gentle. You can copy that energy at home, and your nervous system will understand the message. Night, from a Zen perspective, is when the soul finally gets a chance to talk without shouting. During the day, it speaks in tiny whispers, but you're busy answering emails, paying bills, solving problems. At night, when all the external voices quiet a bit, your inner voice finally becomes audible. Sometimes that voice brings sadness. Sometimes it brings gratitude. Sometimes it brings questions you avoided for months. This is why nights feel heavy for many people. They confuse the arrival of truth with the presence of danger. Zen doesn't ask you to be afraid of what appears at night. It invites you to listen with kindness, not to analyze everything, but to simply acknowledge, "Yes, I hear you," and then let the heart rest. If you think about it, every living being respects the rhythm of night and day, except us humans. Birds settle on branches, plants close their flowers. The world quietly agrees to turn the volume down. We're the only ones trying to keep the sun alive through screens and neon lights at 1:08 I-20 emph. Zen gently reminds us that we are not separate from nature, no matter how many apps we install. Your body is still wired like a forest creature. It understands sunrise and sunset better than deadlines. When you allow your life to sync even a little bit more with natural light and darkness, stress begins to loosen its grip, and night stops being an accident and starts being part of the design of your peace. You don't need to move to the countryside or buy a cabin in the mountains to feel this. Even in a noisy city, there are small signs that the world is winding down when night arrives. Traffic may slow a little, shops close their doors, voices on the street become fewer and farther between. You can choose to notice these small shifts and let them be your bells, calling you into your inner temple. Some people like to mark this with a simple action, closing the curtains fully, lighting a candle, or even whispering a small phrase like, "The day is done." It might sound silly at first, but your subconscious listens to these gestures. They tell the deeper layers of your mind that the marketplace is closing for now. In Buddhist teachings, rest isn't seen as laziness, it's seen as wisdom. A mind that never rests becomes confused, reactive, and easily lost in its own stories. Think of a lake after a storm. The water is muddy, the surface choppy, and you can't see anything clearly. But if the wind calms and nobody throws stones, the lake slowly becomes transparent again. The night is your invitation to let the winds of your day finally calm down. Zen asks only this: stop throwing more stones into the lake with new worries at midnight. Clarity comes not from effort, but from letting the water settle by itself. I know it's tempting to use the night to catch up on what you didn't resolve during the day. You might start planning tomorrow in obsessive detail, rehearsing conversations, or replaying mistakes in high definition. It feels productive in the moment, like you're being responsible and staying in control. But Zen would ask you a simple, disarming question. Is this actually helping, or just exhausting you more? Most of the time, late-night overthinking is like trying to fix a car while you're driving it at full speed. The night was meant to be the garage, the place where you park, turn off the engine, and let the machine cool. If you learn to trust that some problems can wait until morning, you're already practicing Zen without realizing it. A practical idea is to choose one small sentence that becomes your night mantra, something that matches this new view. It could be something like, "Nothing urgent belongs in my bed," or "Night is my temple of rest." Every time your mind tries to drag you back into the marketplace, you gently repeat that sentence. You're not fighting your thoughts with force. You're simply reminding yourself of the role the night plays. Over time, your brain begins to associate darkness with that mantra and the state that comes with it. This is how habits are built. One tiny, repeated choice that slowly rewires your internal map. Zen loves these small, humble practices that look simple on the outside, but move mountains on the inside. There's also something deeply humbling about remembering that while you sleep, the world keeps turning without your control. Emails will remain in inboxes, problems will pause in the same place, and other people's opinions of you won't change at 3 p.m. We forget that the universe survived billions of years before we started worrying about tomorrow's tasks. Zen uses this as a gentle reminder. You are important, but you are not the axis of all existence. Letting the night take over is a way of bowing to something bigger than your to-do list. It's like saying, I have done my part for today. Now life can do what it does while I rest. And that kind of surrender is one of the most powerful medicines for an overworked heart. As you start to see night not as an enemy, but as a quiet teacher, your relationship with sleep begins to change naturally. You stop going to bed like a soldier entering a war and start going like a student entering a classroom. Not a harsh classroom with tests and grades, but one where the lesson is simply learning how to be. You begin to lie down, not asking, will I fail to sleep again? But whispering, what will the night show me today? Sometimes it will show you fatigue, sometimes emotions, sometimes peaceful emptiness. All of them are part of the curriculum of being human, nothing to be ashamed of. And just like that, sleep becomes less of a test and more of a side effect of deep acceptance. Little by little, every night becomes a small retreat, even if you never leave your room. You may still wake up in the middle of the night sometimes. That's part of being alive, not a sign of failure. But instead of panicking, you remember, I'm still inside my inner monastery. I can just sit here and breathe. You might look at the ceiling, listen to the sounds, and feel your body supported, just like monks in their wooden rooms. In that simple awareness, minutes lose their sharp edges, and time stops feeling like an enemy. Even wakefulness becomes less threatening, because you're no longer measuring your value in hours slept. And, paradoxically, it's often when you stop obsessing over sleep that sleep gently returns like an old friend. Soon, we'll go deeper into how to quiet the noisy marketplace mind that refuses to close at night. We'll talk about that overflowing teacup of thoughts you've been carrying to bed, and how Zen suggests you handle it. But for now, I want you to just hold this one new picture. Night as your hidden monastery, not your private battlefield. Let that image sit quietly somewhere at the back of your mind as you move through your evenings. Because once your heart understands this, the way you lie down at the end of the day will never feel quite the same. And when we talk about that teacup next, you'll see exactly why the night needed this new meaning first. It's only when you respect the temple that you're ready to finally empty what you've been spilling on its floor. There's a famous Zen image that explains exactly why your mind feels so overloaded at night. A professor once visited a Zen master to learn about Zen, full of theories and opinions. The master kept pouring tea into the professor's cup until it overflowed, spilling all over the table. The professor shouted, "It's full! No more will go in!" And the master calmly replied, "Exactly. Your mind at bedtime is usually that teacup, already full, but still trying to receive more. All day long you pour news, problems, notifications, worries, and expectations into it without pause. Then you lay in bed and wonder why peace has nowhere to sit. Think about how you use your phone. When storage is almost full, the device slows down, freezes, and refuses to install new apps. You don't scream at the phone for being weak. You know it needs cleaning. But when your own mind starts freezing with anxiety and racing thoughts, you call yourself broken. Zen would say, with a half smile, "My friend, your mental storage is just full. That's all." It doesn't mean you're damaged. It means the cup is overflowing. The solution isn't to hate the cup, but to learn how to empty it with kindness. During the day, you can get away with an overflowing mind because movement hides the mess. You jump from task to task like someone hopping between stones on a rushing river. You don't notice how noisy the water is when you're busy not falling in. But at night, when you finally stop jumping, you suddenly hear the roar you've been ignoring. Every unfinished email, every strange look someone gave you, every "I'll think about this later" comes back. It's not that the night created these thoughts. It simply stopped running long enough for you to hear them. That's why it feels like your brain turns on right when you lie down. I once worked with a man who described his mind as a browser with 50 tabs open, all playing music. He wasn't lazy or weak. He was simply never taught how to close tabs. He believed that to be responsible, he had to keep every problem active in consciousness. Zen gently showed him that responsibility is not the same as constant mental chewing. You can write something down, schedule a time to handle it, and then let the mind rest. After a few weeks of practicing this, he said, "My nights finally feel like a room, not a server farm." His problems didn't disappear, but his mental teacup stopped overflowing every single evening. Notice how often you mentally revisit the same situation, as if repetition would finally fix it. You replay that conversation with your boss, adjusting your answers in a fantasy version of the past. You rewatch an argument with someone you love, hoping that this time they say what you need. The brain thinks it's searching for safety, but it's really just stirring the same pot. Zen doesn't tell you, "Never think about these things." It just asks, "Is this useful right now?" At 2 a.m., with the lights off and your body begging for rest, the answer is usually no. That's the moment to practice emptying, not polishing, the contents of your teacup. A simple, powerful way to empty that cup is what I like to call a mind dump. Before bed, you sit for 5 to 10 minutes with a notebook. Nothing fancy, just honest. You write down everything that's still knocking on the door of your awareness. Tasks, worries, ideas, even random thoughts like, "I should fix that broken drawer someday." You're not solving anything. You're just moving it from your head to a safe external place. It's like telling your mind, "You're not forgetting this. It's stored here for tomorrow." The mind, finally reassured, doesn't have to guard it all night long. Think of it like cleaning a kitchen at the end of the day. You wouldn't leave every pan, plate, and crumb sitting on the counter and then try to cook breakfast. Yet mentally, many people do exactly that. They leave the day's dishes piling up in the sink of the mind. Then they walk into the kitchen at night and wonder why it feels claustrophobic. Your mind dump is a quiet, gentle cleanup, not a deep renovation. You're not repainting the walls, you're just making sure you can walk through the space without tripping. And that alone already changes the way your night feels. Some people resist this idea and say, "If I start writing, I'll think even more." But the truth is, you're already thinking more than enough. The thoughts are just swirling aimlessly. Putting them on paper gives them a home that isn't your nervous system. It's like taking anxious guests out of your living room and giving them a waiting room outside. You can tell them, "I'll see you in the morning at 9 a.m. I promise." Zen loves this kind of clear, simple promise. The mind responds well to structure. When your thoughts trust that you'll return to them, they stop banging on the door so loudly. Another way your teacup overflows is with information that doesn't belong to your life right now. News, drama, online arguments, other people's problems. These all pour into your mind daily. You carry the weight of entire countries, celebrities, and strangers you'll never meet. It's like trying to drink tea with 20 different flavors at once. Eventually, it just tastes like stress. Zen isn't asking you to ignore the world, but to choose when and how you drink from it. Especially at night, your mind doesn't need global headlines. It needs local kindness. Reducing screens and heavy content before bed is not weakness, it's wisdom. Imagine you had a friend who was exhausted, shaking, and close to tears. Would you sit them down and start reading out the worst news of the day? Would you show them arguments from comment sections and remind them of every unfinished task? Of course not. You'd offer them something warm, quiet, and safe. Yet that's exactly how many of us treat ourselves at night without noticing. Zen invites you to be a better friend to yourself. Protect your inner space before sleep. Not by living in denial, but by choosing a time and place for heavy topics that isn't your pillow. There's also the weight of unmade decisions sloshing around in your mental cup. Should I leave this job? Should I end this relationship? Should I move cities? These are not questions that get answered well in the dark, between yawns and anxiety. Zen would say, kindly, big decisions deserve the light of day and a steady mind. You can acknowledge the question at night without forcing an answer. Write it down, breathe with it, and give it an appointment for tomorrow when you're clearer. That simple act turns a storm into a cloud waiting in the morning sky. You might be thinking, but my thoughts don't listen, they just keep talking. That's true. Thoughts are like radio stations that don't turn off just because you're tired. But you can choose whether you put the speaker right next to your ear or leave it in another room. Emptying the cup is not about destroying the radio. It's about lowering the volume. Techniques like writing, gentle breathing, and simple mantras are just volume knobs. You still hear a bit of noise, but it no longer drowns out everything else. And that's usually all you need for sleep to start approaching. Sometimes the cup is full of self-criticism disguised as reflection. You call it thinking about my day, but in reality, you're just beating yourself up with better vocabulary. You judge everything you did, compare yourself to imagined perfection, and issue harsh sentences. No wonder your mind refuses to rest. It's on trial, and the judge never goes home. Zen doesn't deny your mistakes, but it refuses to confuse growth with self-violence. At night, reflection should sound more like, "What did I learn today?" rather than, "How did I fail?" That simple shift empties the cup of poison and replaces it with medicine. One exercise I often suggest is the 3 grains of gratitude practice. Before sleep, you name just 3 things from the day that you're quietly grateful for. They don't have to be big: a good cup of coffee, a kind message, surviving a rough moment. This doesn't erase your problems or magically fix your life, but it adds a few drops of warmth into a cup that is usually filled only with worry. The brain slowly learns that not all thinking at night has to be negative or catastrophic. And that, over time, changes the flavor of your inner dialogue. There's also the illusion that if you stop thinking, you'll lose control of everything, as if worry were some kind of magic rope holding your life together. But notice how many things turn out fine on days you forgot to worry about them. Zen points out this simple truth. Worry doesn't prevent pain. It just adds suffering in advance. Emptying the cup is an act of humility, admitting that you were never controlling as much as you thought. Instead of gripping every detail mentally, you allow life to breathe a little on its own. And strangely, things often flow more smoothly when you loosen your grip. The beautiful part is that you don't have to empty the cup completely every night. Even pouring out just a little can make a huge difference in how heavy it feels. 1 page of writing, 1 small mantra, 1 honest breath is already an act of Zen. You're training your mind gently to trust that it doesn't have to carry everything until dawn. Over weeks and months, this becomes a new habit, a new way of ending the day. Your bed stops being the place where your teacup spills and becomes the place where it rests on the table, ready to be refilled tomorrow, but not drowning you tonight. Soon, we'll go beyond the teacup and look at something even more radical. Not just emptying the mind, but learning to sit beside it like a quiet friend by a flowing river. You'll see how Zen teaches you to watch thoughts drift past without jumping into everyone. For now, it's enough to realize that your suffering at night isn't proof of weakness. It's often just overflow. Once you learn how to pour out gently, sleep has a place to sit beside you. And in the next part of our journey, we'll explore how to watch the river of thoughts without being swept away. Because an emptying cup is powerful, but a calm observer beside the cup is something even deeper. There's a moment in every spiritual journey when someone finally says, "Okay, but how do I stop thinking so much?" Zen's quiet answer is, you don't. You stop fighting the thoughts. Instead of wrestling with every idea that passes through your mind, you change seats. You move from the middle of the traffic to the sidewalk, where you can watch the cars go by. The thoughts keep coming, but you're no longer in the driver's seat of every one of them. This shift sounds small, yet it changes your entire relationship with the night. Because suddenly, your mind can be busy, and you can still be peaceful. Imagine you're standing beside a river at dusk. Leaves, branches, and little pieces of debris drift by on the surface of the water. You don't jump in and grab each leaf, demanding to know where it came from and where it's going. You simply notice. There goes one leaf. There goes another. The river keeps flowing. Zen says your thoughts are exactly like that river, especially at night. The problem isn't that the river flows. Rivers are supposed to flow. The problem is that you keep diving in after every leaf as if your life depended on it. When you lie in bed and a thought appears, "I forgot to reply that message," you usually do one of two things. You either chase it, start planning, rewriting, worrying, or you try to shove it away, yelling, "Stop thinking," inside your head. Both ways keep you stuck in the river, wet and shivering at midnight. The third option, the Zen option, is to see the thought, acknowledge it, and let it float downstream. You might even mentally whisper, "Not for now," like you're kindly closing a shop door. No drama, no war, just a gentle redirection. You stay on the shore, dry, watching the water move. I remember one retreat where we practiced this for what felt like the longest night of my life. We sat in silence, and my brain decided that was the perfect time to replay every embarrassing moment since childhood. At first, I fought them. "Stop! Focus! You're supposed to be Zen right now." The more I resisted, the louder the memories became, like kids banging on a locked door. Then the teacher quietly said, "Don't push your thoughts away. Bow to them, then watch them leave." So I tried it. I greeted each embarrassing memory like an awkward old friend passing on the street, and, to my surprise, they started visiting for shorter and shorter moments. This is the secret. Observation without ownership. Instead of saying, "I am anxious," you begin to notice, "Anxiety is arising." Instead of, "I'm a mess," it becomes, "Messy thoughts are passing through." One feels like a prison sentence. The other feels like weather you can wait out. You don't blame the sky for clouds. You accept that clouds come and go. Zen invites you to treat mental storms in exactly the same way. Even at night, especially at night when storms love to show up uninvited. Think of a train station late in the evening. Trains arrive, stay for a moment, then leave again, heading to countless destinations. You don't chase every train down the tracks just because it pulled into your platform. Yet mentally, that's what we often do. Every thought that enters becomes a journey we must ride. What if, instead, you sat on the bench and watched them come and go? I could board the "what if everything goes wrong" train, but tonight I'll just let it pass. You stay on the platform, and slowly the whole station starts to feel safer. At first, watching thoughts like this can feel almost impossible. You're so used to immediately believing everything your mind says. If a thought whispers, "You're failing," you don't question it. You just wear it like a heavy coat. Zen practice begins when you ask, "Is this a passing thought or an eternal truth?" Most of the time, it's just a habit, an old recording with dramatic background music. Noticing that it's a recording doesn't erase it instantly, but it weakens its spell. And every time you see the trick, you become a little freer. A very simple exercise you can do in bed is the cloud practice. Close your eyes and imagine the dark behind your eyelids as a vast night sky. Every thought that appears about work, love, money, health becomes a little cloud drifting by. You mentally label it gently: worry, planning, memory, fantasy, and then you let it move on. You're not arguing with the cloud. You're not trying to explode it. You're just seeing it for what it is: temporary, moving, not the whole sky. Over time, you start trusting the sky more than you fear the clouds. The beautiful thing is that the body understands this way of seeing very quickly. When you stop wrestling with thoughts, your shoulders drop a little on their own. Your jaw softens, your breathing slowly deepens, even if your mind is still busy. This tells your nervous system, "We're safe," even if the river of thoughts is flowing fast. Sleep loves that kind of message. It's like a green light. You're no longer waiting for the mind to be perfectly empty before resting. You're just learning how to rest beside a mind that's allowed to be imperfect. Sometimes people say, "But if I don't control my thoughts, won't they get worse?" It's a fair fear, especially if you've felt overwhelmed for years. But watch what happens when you try to control them. Usually they get louder, not quieter. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The more force you use, the harder it pops up. Zen's approach is to let the ball float at the surface while you swim around it. Thoughts are allowed to be there, but they're not allowed to dictate your every move. That tiny shift in power changes everything about your nights. One story tells of a monk who complained, "Master, my mind will not stop." The master replied, "Show me this mind that doesn't stop." The monk paused and said, "I can't. It's just thoughts." The master smiled, "If you can't catch it, why do you let it catch you?" That's the trick. You've never actually seen a thought. You've only felt its impact. When you realize that thoughts are more like echoes than bricks, they start feeling lighter. You don't have to carry every echo into your dreams. If you want something practical, try this. Pick one anchor to return to. It might be the feeling of your breath in your chest or the weight of your body on the mattress. When a thought grabs you and drags you down the river, don't panic. The moment you notice, gently bring your attention back to that anchor. No guilt, no drama. It's like returning home after wandering in a dream. You'll do this dozens of times in one night, and that's okay. That is the practice. Each return is a small act of freedom, a quiet, "I choose the shore again." You can even make this playful instead of heavy. Imagine your thoughts as little characters walking across a stage in your mind. One comes out wearing a suit labeled bills, another in a costume labeled "What If," another with "Past Mistakes" painted on their shirt. Instead of letting them hijack the show, you sit in the audience and just watch. Sometimes you'll laugh at how dramatic they are. Sometimes you'll feel compassion for them. In both cases, you remember, I'm the one in the chair, not the actor losing it on stage. And your bed becomes the theater seat where you finally stop being dragged into every scene. Over time, this observer position becomes more natural than the old habit of constant fusion. You start catching yourself in the middle of a spiral and thinking, "Oh, there I go again." Not with hatred, but with a kind smile, like a parent watching a child tell the same story for the 10th time. That kindness is crucial. Without it, observation turns into cold judgment. Zen is not asking you to be a security guard, stiff and suspicious of every thought. It's asking you to be a friendly host, greeting each thought at the door and deciding if it stays for tea or keeps walking. At night, most of them are better off just passing through. You might notice something subtle happening as you practice this night after night. The river of thoughts is still there, but it starts flowing a bit slower. The same worries show up, but they don't dig in their claws as deeply. You fall asleep sooner, not because your mind is empty, but because you're less entangled. Even when you wake up in the middle of the night, the panic response is weaker. You think, the river's noisy again, and you return to your breath, your anchor, your shore. That's how peace quietly sneaks back into a life that once felt ruled by thinking. And here's the most surprising part. This skill doesn't just help you sleep. It starts changing your days too. When stress hits at work or at home, you'll recognize the same choice. Dive into every thought or stand on the shore. You'll feel that gap between stimulus and response widening just a little. In that space, you can choose patience instead of attack, curiosity instead of fear. Night practice becomes daytime wisdom, without you forcing it. And that's where Zen begins to weave through your entire life. Not just your bedtime. Soon, we'll move from the river of thoughts to something even more concrete and comforting. We'll talk about the body itself, how your muscles, breath, and posture can become allies in your spiritual sleep practice. Because watching the river is powerful, but learning to relax the boat you live in multiplies that power. For now, just remember, you don't have to stop the river tonight. You only need to step onto the shore, even for a few breaths, and see that you're not the water. Once you feel that truth, even for a moment, the night stops being a prison and starts becoming a path. And the next step on that path is already waiting in the quiet language of your own body. There's a quiet truth that most people only discover after years of insomnia. The mind doesn't calm down because the body still thinks it's daytime. Your thoughts are racing, yes, but your shoulders are also locked. Your jaw is clenched, your chest is tight. It's like trying to park a car while your foot is still pressing the accelerator. Zen never separates mind and body. They're like two friends walking the same path. If one is tense, the other can't relax fully, no matter how hard you try to sleep. So tonight, instead of fighting your thoughts, we begin by befriending your body. Imagine you've carried a heavy backpack all day without taking it off. Even when you finally reach home, your muscles are still shaped around the weight. That's exactly what happens with stress in your body. You close your laptop, put your phone down, but your nervous system is still holding the backpack. Zen would say, you left the office, but the office didn't leave your shoulders. The first step is noticing where that invisible backpack is sitting right now. Neck, jaw, shoulders, stomach. Your body's always telling the story of your day. Think about how you fall onto your bed at night. Do you actually lie down, or do you crash like someone who missed the last step on the stairs? Most people collapse into bed already curled around their worries. Hands tight, face slightly frowning, breath shallow like they're hiding from life. The body doesn't understand bedtime. It understands posture and breath. If you lie down like you're bracing for impact, it assumes danger is still here. No wonder it refuses to drift into deep, trusting sleep. A simple starting point is what I call the scan of honesty. You lie on your back or side, close your eyes, and gently scan your body from head to toe. Not to judge, not to fix, but just to see what's actually there. Jaw, tight or soft. Neck, stiff or loose. Belly, held or relaxed. This small act of awareness is like switching on a light in a room you've been walking through in the dark. Once you've seen the tension, you can invite it to release, not command it. You quietly tell your shoulders, "You've worked enough today. You can drop a little now." You let your jaw unclench, maybe even letting your mouth open slightly, like someone who fell asleep watching TV. You soften your belly, allowing it to rise and fall freely with your breath. You don't need to relax everything perfectly. That's just another pressure. You just relax 5% more, then another 5%, like slowly loosening the lid of a jar. The body listens to gentle instructions much better than to aggressive orders. Let me tell you about a woman who swore her problem was overthinking. When we talked, she kept saying, "My brain never stops. My thoughts are insane at night." But when I asked her to lie down and describe her body, she realized something surprising. Her fists were clenched so hard, her nails marked her palms. Her shoulders were practically kissing her ears, and her stomach felt like a knotted rope. Her mind wasn't the only one awake. Her whole body thought it was in a battlefield. Once she learned to relax her muscles, her thoughts suddenly had less fuel. There's a Zen saying that you can't calm the mind while standing in a burning house. Your body is that house. If every muscle is screaming danger, the mind assumes there's something to fight. So instead of starting at the top with your thinking, you start from the bottom with your breathing and posture. You lie down like someone who trusts the floor won't disappear beneath them. You let the mattress hold your weight completely, as if you're giving it the burden of your day. For a few seconds, you let yourself be heavy without apologizing for it. A practical exercise you can try tonight is the stone in the lake technique. Picture your body as if it were slowly sinking into a warm, still lake. First your heels sink in, then your calves, then your hips, then your back, then your head. You imagine gravity as a friend, gently pulling you downward into safety. You stop trying to hold yourself up, and you let the bed do 100% of the work. Every exhale is like surrendering another piece of tension to the water. You don't fight the lake. You allow it to carry you without effort. Breathing is the simplest, most ancient tool, and yet people underestimate it completely. They think, "I already breathe. That can't be the problem." But pay attention. Sleep-deprived breathing is often shallow and rushed, like someone hiding from a predator. Zen breathing is the opposite. Slow, deep, and honest, as if you finally admitted, "I want to rest." Try this. Inhale gently through your nose to a count of 4. Hold for 2. Exhale through your mouth to a count of 6. Do this 10 times, not as a competition, but as a ritual. By the 5th breath, your nervous system starts getting the message. We're safe now. You don't need fancy equipment to reset your body. Your hands are already sacred tools. Place one hand on your chest and the other on your belly. feel which one rises more when you breathe. If only the chest moves, it usually means stress is driving the car. If the belly rises, you're closer to that calm, deep body breathing that Zen practice loves. Gently invite the belly to move more, like you're inflating a small balloon in your abdomen. It's a childlike movement, and that's exactly what makes it healing. Sometimes the body holds stories the mind refuses to admit. That knot in your throat may be a conversation you avoided. The weight in your chest might be grief you never gave words to. The tension in your stomach could be fear about money, love, or the future. Zen doesn't force those stories to come out all at once. It simply gives them room by releasing the physical armor around them. When the body softens, emotions finally have space to breathe instead of suffocating you at midnight. You might notice that when your body starts to relax, your mind forms an alliance with it. Thoughts slow down, not because you won, but because the alarm bells are quieter. Your brain receives a new message from your muscles and breath. We survived today. It's a simple sentence, but at night, it's incredibly powerful. Even if everything isn't perfect, you still made it to this bed, to this moment. Zen loves that kind of humble truth. It doesn't need drama to recognize victory. Surviving one more day is already proof of quiet strength. There's also something almost sacred about creating a small bedtime ritual for your body. It could be stretching your neck slowly, rolling your shoulders back a few times, maybe massaging your own hands or feet for a minute, thanking them for carrying you all day, perhaps lighting a candle or dimming the lights 10 minutes earlier than usual. You're telling your body, we're transitioning now, instead of abruptly slamming from chaos into silence. Even animals stretch and shake themselves out after stress. They don't just freeze. Your ritual is your way of shaking off the day with a touch of grace. Think of your bedroom as a small temple, instead of a storage room for your worries. If your bed is the altar, your body is the main offering you place there each night. Would you throw it there, crumpled, tense, and buzzing with leftover arguments and notifications? Or would you arrive with a bit more presence, like someone entering a sacred space? You don't need incense or mantras in Sanskrit to do this. Just a conscious pause before lying down already changes the energy of the room. You turn sleep from an accident into a ceremony. Humor also lives in the body, and it's surprisingly therapeutic. Sometimes, when you notice your shoulders up to your ears, try exaggerating it a bit. Lift them as high as you can, hold for a second, then drop them with a sigh. Do it 3 times, almost like a cartoon character shaking off a scare. Your nervous system understands this playful signal and starts to unwind. Who said spiritual practice had to be stiff and serious all the time? A smile in the dark can be as holy as a prayer. Little by little, as you repeat these body practices night after night, something shifts. Sleep stops being a battle and becomes more like returning to the ocean after a long day on land. Your body recognizes the path more quickly, like a well-worn trail through a forest. The muscles remember how to soften. The breath remembers how to deepen. You start to feel that you're not forcing sleep, you're allowing it. That's a very Zen distinction. Forcing is ego, allowing is wisdom. And your body, surprisingly, has always known the difference. Soon, we'll step into an even more intimate territory, the quiet stories your heart tells you in the dark. Because once the body has softened and the mind has stepped onto the shore, something tender wakes up inside. Old emotions, forgotten dreams, and silent fears start rising, not to frighten you, but to be seen. The next part of our journey is learning how to meet those visitors with kindness instead of panic. For now, your only task is simple. Let your body be on your side, not your enemy. When the lights go out, once you feel that alliance, the night becomes less of a threat and more of a teacher. And what it teaches next goes straight to the center of who you really are. There's a moment, usually when the lights are off and the world is quiet, when the real visitors arrive. Not emails, not notifications, but emotions that you manage to dodge all day. Sadness pulls up a chair, anxiety paces the room, loneliness sits at the edge of the bed. You might think, this is the worst time for you to show up. But for them, it's the first time you've actually slowed down enough to hear them. Zen doesn't see these visitors as enemies. It sees them as messengers that hate crowds. They wait for the quiet of night to finally knock on your door. Most people try to win a wrestling match against these feelings. They tell themselves, I shouldn't feel this. I have to be strong. I'll think about this tomorrow. But the feelings don't speak the language of should and later. They speak the language of presence. I'm here, now. The more you push them away, the louder they knock and the heavier your chest feels. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. The harder you press, the stronger it pushes back. Soon, your whole night becomes a struggle with something that just wanted 5 honest minutes. Imagine your inner world as a small, quiet house. Every emotion that shows up at night is a guest at your door. You don't have to make each one a permanent roommate. But if you pretend they don't exist, they start rattling the windows. Zen invites you to do something surprisingly simple and brave. Open the door. Not with a party, not with fireworks, just with a calm. I see you. Come in for a moment. Often, that alone softens both the emotion and the tension in your body. Let's say sadness comes in wearing the face of something you lost. A relationship, a dream, a version of yourself that didn't survive this year. If you keep saying, I'm fine, it doesn't matter, you're basically turning your back on it. Sadness doesn't leave. It just becomes heavier, like fog thickening in the dark. But if you whisper, yeah, this did hurt, didn't it? Something shifts. Tears might come, or maybe just a soft ache. But there's also relief. The house of your heart finally has someone home to answer the doorbell. One night, a man told me he felt weak because he cried every time he lay down. During the day, he wore armor, jokes, productivity, perfection. At night, the armor fell off, and all the unshed tears lined up like children after school. He thought that meant he was failing spiritually. But what was really happening is that his heart trusted the darkness more than the daylight. We talked about letting those tears be part of his practice, not a sign of defeat. Within a month, he still cried sometimes, but he slept better because he stopped fighting himself. Anxiety is a particularly noisy guest. It doesn't knock. It bursts in talking about every possible disaster in vivid detail. It loves phrases like, what if, and imagine if, and you know what could happen. The instinct is to argue back, to debate each scenario until 3 a.m. Zen offers a different response. You're worried. I can feel that. Come sit down, but we're not planning the apocalypse tonight. You acknowledge the energy without feeding it stories. It's like sitting next to a hyperactive friend and gently taking away the microphone. A practical way to do this is to give your emotions a physical place. When worry comes, you imagine it sitting in a chair in the corner of the room. You don't merge with it. You don't kick it out into a storm either. You just see it clearly. There you are, worry. I know you're trying to protect me. Maybe you place sadness on the other side, like another guest. Suddenly, instead of being inside you like a storm, they're in front of you, like people you're talking to. That tiny shift gives you room to breathe. Sometimes emotions appear not as clear feelings, but as heaviness. You lie in bed and say, I don't even know what I feel. I just feel off. Your chest feels tight, your stomach restless, your mind blurry. In those moments, don't force yourself to come up with a label. Zen isn't obsessed with naming everything. It cares more about contact. You can gently put a hand on your chest and say, whatever this is, I'm here with you. That simple promise can be more healing than a perfect diagnosis. You might have learned early in life that emotions make you too much. Maybe someone told you, stop crying, be strong, or you're overreacting. So your nervous system decided that feeling deeply was dangerous. At night, though, that lid can't stay on forever. Pressure always finds a way out. Zen at night is like gently learning a new rule. Here, in this bed, I don't have to be impressive. You don't need to perform calmness. You can actually feel what's true. And that authenticity is what your soul has been craving. One exercise you can try is the nighttime interview. When a strong emotion arrives, you imagine sitting across from it like a wise interviewer. You ask, what are you trying to protect? What are you afraid would happen if you left? You won't always get a clear answer, but sometimes surprising insights show up. Fear might say, I'm just trying to make sure you're prepared. Sadness might whisper, I wanted you to notice what still matters to you. Even anger might admit, I'm here because your boundaries were ignored. Notice how the tone changes when you become curious instead of hostile. You're not yelling, why are you here again? At your own heart. You're more like a patient friend asking, okay, talk to me. What's really going on? Curiosity softens inner conflict faster than harshness ever could. Zen thrives in that kind of gentle questioning. It's not about attacking, it's about seeing. And once something is really seen, it doesn't have to shout as loudly to be heard. That's when emotions stop hijacking your whole night and become visitors who come and go. Sometimes people ask, but if I let myself feel everything, won't I drown? It's a real fear, especially if you've spent years holding everything in. The key is to remember, you're not jumping into an endless ocean without a raft. Your breath, your body, your awareness, they are your raft. You can touch the emotion, feel it, then come back to the anchor of your breathing. A few waves might wash over you, but you're not staying under. You're practicing entering and leaving the water on purpose. There's a simple pattern you can follow when emotions rise at night. Notice, name, nurture. First, you notice, something is here. I feel it in my chest or stomach. Then you name it softly, if you can. This feels like fear, or this feels like grief. Finally, you nurture it. You place a hand over that area and breathe, as if you're comforting a child. You don't need long speeches or fancy affirmations, just a quiet presence, a feeling of, I'm not abandoning you this time. Your heart has been waiting for that kind of loyalty from you. Humor can gently enter this space too, in a loving way. Sometimes, when my own mind dramatizes a situation at night, I imagine a soap opera narrator. In tonight's episode of Everything is Falling Apart, our hero forgets to send one email. Suddenly, the intensity drops a little, and I chuckle in the dark. I still respect the emotion, but I stop worshipping its drama as absolute truth. Zen doesn't kill humor. It cleans it up so it heals instead of hides. A tiny smile can loosen a very tight knot inside. As you allow emotions to visit without controlling the night, something subtle changes. You start to notice that none of them last forever. Fear rises, peaks, then gradually fades, like a wave losing intensity as it reaches the sand. Sadness comes in heavy, then softens into a quiet tiredness, then into sleep. You realize, through experience, not theory, that you are larger than whatever you feel. You are the house, not just the guests. And that realization is one of the most liberating discoveries a human can make. With time, your bed can become the safest place for your emotions to be seen. Not the place where you're ambushed, but the place where the truth finally takes off its shoes and rests. You don't have to fix your whole life between midnight and 2 a.m. You only have to stop exiling the parts of you that are already exhausted. As you do this, sleep begins to feel less like escape and more like a continuation of this kindness. You fall asleep not by running away from yourself, but by finally being on your own side. And that changes the way you wake up in the morning, too. Soon, we'll move from these inner visitors to another quiet miracle that Zen loves to talk about. The way small, simple joys and gentle gratitude can rewiring the very landscape where your nights unfold. Because once you learn to welcome pain without drowning, you become ready to welcome joy without fear. For now, it's enough to know this. Every emotion that knocks at your door is proof that you're still beautifully alive. And when you can feel all that and still find rest, you've stepped into a deeper kind of freedom. The next step is learning how to nourish that freedom with tiny moments of light. And those lights are much closer than you think, even in the darkest nights. There's a strange habit the human mind has. It remembers the one thorn and forgets the whole rose bush. You can have 10 ordinary, quietly good moments in a day and one stressful email, and guess what your brain replays in bed? Exactly. The email, in high definition, with emotional surround sound. Zen doesn't deny that the thorn hurts, but it also refuses to let you forget the roses. Not as a cliché, but as a practical way to calm the nervous system. Because the place where you rest your attention before sleep becomes the soil where your dreams grow. If you only plant fear there, it's no wonder your nights feel poisoned. Imagine your attention as a small flashlight in a dark room. Whatever you point it at suddenly becomes your entire world. If you aim it only at what went wrong, the room looks haunted. If you deliberately sweep it over the good, the neutral, the small blessings, the room softens. Zen gratitude isn't about pretending everything is perfect. It's about refusing to live with a broken flashlight. You teach your mind, gently, to notice more than just the problems. And that simple shift changes the flavor of your night completely. Think about your last 24 hours. Chances are, there were tiny moments of kindness or comfort that your brain quickly skipped over. Maybe someone held a door for you, or sent a random message, or shared a meme that made you smile for 3 seconds. Maybe your coffee tasted just right, or the sky looked beautiful for a brief moment. At the time, you felt a microsecond of joy, and then jumped back into survival mode. Zen practice is like rewinding the day and saying, "Wait, that mattered too." You gather those little sparks and bring them with you into the dark. A simple way to do this is with a 3 blessings inventory before sleep. Lying in bed, lights off or dim, you ask yourself, what are 3 good things that happened today? They don't have to be big. I laughed. I finished something. I survived a hard moment. You linger on each for a few breaths, almost like placing 3 small candles on an altar. You imagine the warmth of those moments filling your chest, even if just a little. You're not erasing the hard parts, you're balancing the scale your mind tends to tip. Over time, your brain learns. The day isn't just danger, there's light here too. I once met a man who said, "Nothing good ever happens to me." So we tried this exact exercise together. At first, he rolled his eyes and said, "Fine, I had lunch." We dug deeper. Was it warm? Did it taste okay? Did you eat alone or with someone? He admitted the soup was actually really good, and that the woman at the counter smiled and asked how he was. He'd dismissed that completely, because it wasn't a lottery win or a miracle. By the end of the week, his nothing good had quietly turned into, "I guess some small things are nice." From a Zen point of view, those small things are not small. They're training sessions for your attention and your heart. Every time you notice a tiny blessing, you're strengthening a different mental muscle, one that says, life is not only threat, it's also support. When you lie down with that muscle slightly stronger, your body doesn't brace as hard. Sleep comes more easily to someone who feels held by life, even in a modest way. Gratitude, in this sense, is not a mood, it's a skill. Gratitude at night also helps heal a very old habit. The belief that you're always behind on goals, on healing, on some invisible timeline everyone else seems to follow. When you review your day only through what's missing, you go to bed in debt, spiritually speaking. But when you notice, I handled that conversation, I kept going even tired, I made someone laugh, something shifts. You start to see yourself not just as a problem to be fixed, but as a person who is trying, really trying. Zen bows to that effort in you, even when you don't. And that bow, even if quiet, starts to untie a lot of inner knots. You can also turn gratitude outward, beyond your own story. Think about the unseen network that allowed you to reach that bed tonight. The people who grew your food, the hands that built your home, the workers who kept the electricity flowing, the teacher who taught you to read, the stranger who once helped when you were lost, the friend who listened. You're not floating alone in space. You're woven into a web of countless lives. When you feel that, even for a moment, isolation cracks just a little. And loneliness, one of the biggest thieves of sleep, loses some of its power. There's a lovely Zen habit of bowing, to the cushion, to the room, to other people. It's not about worship, it's about recognition. Thank you for existing in my life, even if just for a moment. You can do a version of that mentally at night. Bow inwardly to the day, to the person who annoyed you. They taught you patience. To the challenge, it showed you your strength. To the kindness, it reminded you you're not alone. You're not saying, everything was perfect. You're saying, even in the mess, there was something worth seeing. Sometimes gratitude feels fake because we think it must be grand. We imagine we need a spiritual fireworks show to be truly thankful. But Zen walks the opposite way. It finds holiness in very ordinary details. The feel of clean sheets, the sound of rain, the warmth of tea, the weight of a blanket. If you can be sincerely grateful for those things, you're already far along the path. Because that means you've stopped waiting for life to be spectacular before you let yourself feel joy. And joy, even in small sips, is deeply sedative to an anxious mind. Here's a little practice you can try. Gratitude breathing. As you inhale, You mentally say, "Thank you for," and as you exhale, you fill in the blank. "Thank you for this bed." Next breath. "Thank you for having made it through today." Next. "Thank you for the chance to rest." You don't have to feel fireworks every time. The point is the direction of your attention. You're steering your inner boat toward calmer waters before drifting into sleep. Of course, some nights your mind will argue, "There's nothing to be grateful for today." Those are the important nights. On those days, gratitude isn't about glossing over pain, it's about finding a thread when everything feels dark. Sometimes the only honest thing you can say is, "Thank you that this day is over." And believe it or not, that counts. Because even in that sentence, there's a tiny spark of relief, a doorway to rest. Zen never demands fake smiles. It honors simple honesty. If you practice this night after night, you'll begin to notice a quiet side effect in the morning. You don't wake up already in debt with the new day. Instead of starting with, "I'm already late, already behind," you begin with a little leftover warmth. It's like falling asleep with a small candle in your chest and waking up to find it still glowing. That glow doesn't erase problems, but it gives you more courage to face them. You walk into the day less starved, less resentful, more resourced, and that changes the flavor of your whole life over time. There's something else hidden inside gratitude that people rarely talk about: dignity. When you choose to notice and honor the good, you're not just being positive. You're refusing to let pain define 100% of your reality. You're saying, "Yes, this hurts, and yes, this is hard, and still, I will not close my eyes to what sustains me." That's not naivety. That's spiritual courage. That kind of courage doesn't shout. It whispers. But its whisper echoes very loudly in the quiet hours of the night. As gratitude becomes more natural, you begin to see your nights differently. They're no longer just a pause between two stressful days. They become a sacred workshop where attention, kindness, and perspective are quietly reshaped. Sleep stops being a desperate escape and becomes a continuation of how you treat yourself when you're awake. You discover that going to bed grateful doesn't mean ignoring your struggles. It means remembering that, even in struggle, you are not abandoned by life. And that memory is like a soft pillow for your soul. Soon, we'll take everything we've touched so far: attention, body, emotions, gratitude, and weave it into something even deeper. We'll step fully into the heart of Zen teachings themselves, the stories, paradoxes, and simple phrases that act like keys in the lock of the restless mind. Because when wisdom sneaks into the night in the form of stories and koans, something magical happens to the way you think and feel. For now, just know this: every small thank you you whisper in the dark is a seed. And seeds, even when you can't see them, are changing the soil beneath you. Soon we'll water those seeds with the oldest teachings of Buddhism, brought gently into your pillow time. And that's where your nights start turning into a living temple of quiet insight. There's a special kind of story that doesn't behave like a normal story. It doesn't give you a clear moral. It doesn't always have a happy ending. And sometimes it sounds straight up weird. These are the Zen stories and koans, and they weren't created to entertain the mind. They were forged to interrupt the mind, like a gentle slap that wakes you from a dream. When you're lying in bed spinning in circles, that's exactly what you need. Not more thoughts, but a new way of seeing. A Zen story is like a window quietly opening in a room with no air. You didn't even know you were suffocating until the breeze came in. Let me tell you one of the simplest Zen stories. A student asks the master, "What is Zen?" The master replies, "When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep. At first, the student laughs, thinking it's a joke. But then he realizes his own life, eating while scrolling, sleeping while thinking about tomorrow, always halfway somewhere else. The story is not about food or sleep. It's about being where you are. And as you lie in bed hearing this, you might notice how rarely you actually do that. Another famous koan asks, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" Your rational mind rushes in. That makes no sense. There is no sound. Exactly. That's the point. The question wasn't built to be answered logically. It was built to exhaust your usual way of thinking. When the mind finally gets tired of chasing its own tail, something else appears. Silence, awareness, presence. In that silence, you're no longer a prisoner of thoughts. You're the space they move in. And that space is where peace lives. Think about how this works in your everyday life. You've probably had moments where something simple broke your mental loop. You were worried, worried, worried. Then your pet did something silly, or a child laughed, or the sunset caught your eye. For a few seconds, the worry disappeared, even though nothing was fixed. Zen stories are like that. Little moments that pull you out of the trance of thought. They don't change your whole life in one blow, but they shake the snow globe of your mind. And in that shaking, the old patterns start to lose their power. Here's another story. Two monks are arguing about a flag blowing in the wind. One says, "The flag is moving." The other says, "No, the wind is moving." Their teacher walks by and says, "Neither the wind nor the flag is moving. Your mind is moving." At night, your flag might be your job, your relationship, your bank account. You swear that's what's causing all your pain. But Zen gently asks, "Yes, but who's moving inside your head right now?" And that question alone can loosen the grip of the problem. I remember someone who was obsessed with a mistake they made years ago. Every night, the flag of that memory flapped loudly in the winds of their guilt. We talked about this story of the flag and the mind. They realized that the event was long gone, like a storm that had already passed. The only place it was still raining was in their thoughts. From then on, every time the memory came back, they whispered, "Ah, the mind is moving again." That small sentence became their personal koan, and sleep slowly became easier. Zen stories work best when you don't rush to figure them out. You let them sit in you like tea leaves in hot water. The flavor comes slowly, changing as you swirl them around with your attention. Sometimes, a line that seemed pointless at first suddenly hits you days later. It might pop up while you're washing dishes or staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. That's how you know the story wasn't just words. It became part of your inner language, and once it lives in you, it starts answering questions you didn't know how to ask. There's a tale of a monk who asked his teacher, "How can I find peace?" The teacher said, "Who is disturbing you?" The monk listed situations, people, memories, fears. The teacher listened and repeated, "Yes, but who is the one being disturbed?" At first it sounded like philosophy to the monk, but later, lying awake at night, it clicked. He realized there was a part of him that noticed the disturbance, but wasn't disturbed itself. Touching that part, even for a moment, was like finding a calm seat in the middle of a stormy bus ride. You can play with this koan yourself when thoughts are loud. Instead of fighting each thought, ask softly, "Who is noticing this thought?" You don't need a perfect answer. The question itself redirects your attention, like turning your head to see the sky instead of staring at traffic. You might feel a tiny shift, a sense of stepping back from the noise. That step back is not escape. It's perspective. And perspective, especially at night, is priceless. Another Zen story. A student asks, "What is Buddha?" The master answers, 3 pounds of flax. In other words, this, right here, utterly ordinary life. The student wanted some mystical answer, some fireworks of enlightenment. Instead, he got a bag of flax thrown at his expectations. The teaching is simple. Don't miss the sacred because it's wearing everyday clothes. As you lie there, even your breathing, your heartbeat, the warmth of your blanket, this is your 3 pounds of flax. Think about how often you chase extraordinary experiences. The perfect trip, the perfect partner, the perfect job, the perfect spiritual insight. Meanwhile, thousands of ordinary, quiet gifts walk past you unnoticed. The feel of the pillow under your head, the softness of your own exhale, the simple fact that you made it through today. Zen stories pull your attention back to what's already here. They whisper, "Stop waiting for your life to start. This is your life." And that realization can make even the act of falling asleep feel meaningful. Zen also loves using stories to pierce illusions about control. There's the story of the man on a galloping horse. Someone shouts, "Where are you going?" And he answers, "I don't know. Ask the horse." The horse is his habits, fears, rushed routines. How many nights have you been dragged by that same horse, from worry to worry, memory to memory? Hearing this, you might smile and think, "Yeah, my horse has been running my life." And that smile already slows the animal down a bit. These stories don't shame you. They show you. They don't say, "You're bad for being anxious or restless." They say, "Look, here's a mirror. Do you see the pattern?" Once you see the pattern, you're no longer just a victim of it. You become a participant in changing it, one small choice at a time. Maybe tonight, the change is as simple as breathing with a story instead of with your fears. That alone is a different kind of night. You can even create your own mini koans based on your life. If your mind always says, "What if everything goes wrong?" your koan might be, "What if I'm more capable than I think?" If your thought is, "I'm always alone," your koan might be, "Who is the one noticing this loneliness?" These aren't affirmations you're forced to believe. They're doors you gently push open. You repeat them like soft mantras when the usual worries start marching in. Little by little, your inner script changes tone. The same mind that once trapped you starts to become curious instead. As these Zen stories and questions sink deeper, your nights become more than just unconscious hours. They turn into a silent classroom where old beliefs loosen and new understandings are born. You're not just trying to knock yourself out. You're quietly waking up in the middle of your own life. Sleep becomes sweeter when it's preceded by this kind of clarity. You're not running from yourself. You're walking with yourself into the dark, hand in hand. And as dawn returns day after day, you're a little less the person who went to bed, and a little more the one you're becoming. Soon, we'll begin weaving these insights into concrete, gentle rituals, bridges between wisdom and your everyday mornings. There's a big difference between knowing a path and actually walking it, especially when the lights go off. You can listen to teachings, feel touched by stories, even cry a little, and still repeat the same restless routine at night. Zen is not impressed by what you understood only in your head. It wants to know what you do when your head hits the pillow. That's where rituals come in, not as rigid rules, but as friendly scaffolding for your soul. Gentle structures that hold you when your energy is low and your mind is tired of making decisions, like rails that guide the train into the station every single night. Think of a ritual as a script you write in advance, so your half-sleepy brain doesn't improvise chaos. You already know what happens if you let it improvise. Scrolling, comparing, overthinking, regretting. So you design a different sequence, one that quietly tells your nervous system, "We're safe. We're slowing down." You don't need 20 steps. Even 3 solid ones can change everything. Maybe it's dimming the lights, stretching for 5 minutes, and breathing with one simple phrase. The key is repetition. Like a lullaby, your body starts recognizing. Over time, the ritual itself becomes a kind of medicine. Let's start with the environment, because your bedroom speaks even when you're silent. If your room looks like a storage unit for unfinished tasks, your brain reads work in progress, not rest. Clothes piled on the chair whisper, "You're behind." Open tabs on your laptop glow, "There's more to do." Zen doesn't demand a minimalist monastery, but it does invite intentional space. Even 5 minutes of tidying before bed can be a sacred act, clearing the altar for your sleep. You're telling your mind, "For tonight, this room has one job only, to hold rest." A simple nighttime ritual might begin with light. Bright, white light screams daytime to your system, even at midnight. So you soften it. A warm lamp, a candle, or just a dimmer setting. You could think of it like sunset inside your house, gently telling your body that the day is exhaling. Screens begin to step back, like guests politely leaving a party. Not because phones are evil, but because your nervous system needs a clean goodbye. You're closing the curtain on stimulation so you can open it on quiet. Next, you might choose one physical ritual that's always the same. Maybe it's washing your face slowly, feeling the water, noticing the temperature. Maybe it's brushing your teeth with full attention instead of planning tomorrow's arguments. Maybe it's putting lotion on your hands or arms as if you were caring for a child. The action itself is simple, but the awareness you bring to it is sacred. You're practicing the Zen art of just this. When brushing, just brush. When washing, just wash. By the time you reach your bed, you're already less scattered. Then comes your inner ritual, the way you talk to yourself before the dark. Most people go to bed with an internal speech that sounds like a disappointed boss. "You didn't do enough. You should be further ahead. You messed that up." No wonder the body clenches and the mind avoids sleep. Your ritual can be different. A short, honest check-in. What did I handle today? Where did I show courage? What did I survive? You're not lying to yourself. You're finally noticing your own effort. You might even choose one sentence that you repeat every single night. Something like, "For today, it was enough," or "I did what I could with what I had." It doesn't have to be poetic. It just has to be true enough that your heart believes it. You say it not once, but several times, letting it sink into your chest like warm tea. At first, your old inner critic will roll its eyes and protest. But if you stay consistent, a new voice starts growing beside it. The voice that sounds less like a judge and more like a wise, patient friend. Breath can be the spine of your ritual, the part you never skip. You lie down, place a hand on your belly, and count a small pattern. In for 4, hold for 2, out for 6. You don't push, you just ride the breath like a wave gently rising and falling. Thoughts will show up, of course. They always do. But the breath is your metronome, your background rhythm, the steady drum beneath the noise. Each exhale feels like putting one worry down on the floor beside the bed. You can pick it up tomorrow if you really need to. You can weave gratitude into this ritual almost without effort. Between breaths, you whisper, "Thank you for this bed. Thank you for this breath. Thank you that this day is over." Even if the day was hard, that last one is a real, honest relief. You let small thank yous sprinkle over the events of the day like gentle rain. You're not erasing pain. You're adding context. Your mind stops acting like the prosecutor of your life and becomes a slightly fairer judge. That's all you need to soften into sleep. Rituals don't stop at night. They stretch into morning like a bridge. How you wake up often decides how you'll fall asleep later. If your first act in the morning is grabbing your phone and flooding your mind, the tone is set. Zen would gently suggest an alternative. Give yourself 60 seconds before the world enters. 1 minute to notice your breath, your body, the simple fact that you woke up again. You might even say, "Another chance. Okay, let's walk it a little differently today." That tiny pause changes the entire flavor of the day that follows. A morning ritual doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to be intentional. Maybe it's drinking your first glass of water in silence, really tasting it. Maybe it's standing by a window for 30 seconds, noticing the sky, whatever it looks like. Maybe it's putting a hand on your heart and saying, "Let's try to be kind to ourselves today." You're not promising perfection. You're setting direction, like adjusting the course of a ship by a few degrees. Over weeks and months, that small adjustment takes you to a different continent inside yourself. You can also carry one Zen phrase with you through your day as a portable ritual. Just this breath when things get overwhelming. One thing at a time, when your mind wants to juggle everything and drop it all. Maybe, when life throws twists you instantly label as good or bad. These phrases are like anchors you drop into the present moment again and again. They don't stop the waves, but they keep your boat from drifting too far into panic. By night, you return to bed less tangled in mental storms. Here's a powerful idea. Your whole day can become a preparation for peaceful sleep. Every time you pause, breathe, or notice something beautiful, you're making a deposit in your rest account. Every small act of presence, even while washing dishes or answering emails, adds up. By the time you reach your pillow, you don't arrive bankrupt. You arrive with at least a few coins of calm and clarity in your pocket. Zen is not about a single grand practice, but about hundreds of tiny moments of awareness. And nights are simply where all those moments come home. If this all sounds like a lot, remember, ritual loves simplicity, not perfection. You don't have to start with 10 steps. Start with one that feels doable even on your worst day. Maybe just the breath pattern. Maybe just the 3 blessings. Maybe just the "for today, it was enough." Let that one thing become non-negotiable, like brushing your teeth. Once it's part of you, you can add another layer if you want. This is how Zen practice grows, organically, gently, respecting your humanity. No rush, no spiritual Olympics, just steady companionship with yourself. Over time, these rituals form a quiet circle around your life. Mornings begin with a bit more intention. Days include more small pauses. Nights end with less warfare. You start to feel that you're not at the mercy of your moods in the same way. Yes, storms still come, but you've laid down paths you can walk, even when tired. Your bed becomes the closing chapter of a day that had meaning, not just exhaustion. Sleep stops being an escape and becomes part of your practice of living awake. Routine to Twainu. And what comes next deepens that even further, touching who you believe you are at the core. There's a story I love about a sculptor and a block of stone. People would gather around his workshop, amazed at how he created such lifelike statues. One day, a boy asked, How did you turn that rock into a horse? The sculptor smiled and said, I just removed everything that wasn't a horse. Zen says something similar about you. Your true self isn't something you build from scratch. It's what remains when you gently remove what you are not. Nighttime, in the quiet, is when those extra layers become easier to notice. Since you were a child, the world has been sticking labels on you like Post-its. Too sensitive. Too lazy. Too loud. Too quiet. Not enough. Too much. You wear these labels for so long that you start thinking they're your skin. So when you lay down at night, you're not just tired. You're carrying a lifetime of names that never really fit. Zen looks at you in that exhausted state and whispers, You are not your labels. You are not the worst thing you've done, nor the harshest word someone threw at you. You are the one who noticed all of that and survived it. Imagine your life like a long hallway of mirrors. Some mirrors are school, some are family, some are relationships, some are social media. Each mirror reflects a version of you, but none of them shows the whole of you. Yet, over time, you picked one or two distorted mirrors and believed, this is who I am. Maybe the failure mirror. Maybe the not lovable enough mirror. Zen gently takes that mirror off the wall at night and asks, what if this is just one angle? You start to suspect that your reflection and your reality are not the same thing. Think of one label that still haunts you. Lazy, maybe, because you froze when life was too heavy. Broken, maybe, because life hit you harder than you knew how to handle. From a Zen perspective, those reactions weren't proof of a defective soul. They were proof of a nervous system doing its best with what it knew. If a child was overwhelmed and shut down, you'd call that survival, not failure. Zen invites you to offer yourself the same understanding you'd give that child. There's a man I once knew who always said, I'm just a mess. That's who I am. It became his catchphrase, his brand, almost a joke. But at night, that joke felt like a cage. We started to explore something simple. What if I'm a mess is not an identity, but a phase? He began changing the sentence in his mind to, I feel like a mess right now. One tiny word, feel, gave him space to breathe. Because what you feel can change. What you are sounds permanent. Zen teaches that there is something in you that doesn't change when your mood changes. It was there when you were a child, staring at the sky. It was there in your darkest moments, quietly watching even when you thought you were alone. That awareness that notices fear, sadness, joy, boredom, that's closer to who you are than any story. You could call it Buddha nature, soul, pure awareness, or not name it at all. Names don't matter. The experience does. Lying in bed, you can begin to lean into that part instead of into old labels. Try a small experiment tonight. As thoughts arise, I'm a failure. I'm not lovable. I always ruin things. You don't argue or agree. You simply add one soft sentence after them. This is a story my mind is telling right now. Not the truth. Not the final word. But a story. You notice where in your body that story lands. Chest, throat, stomach. Then you place a hand there and breathe, as if comforting someone who just heard a painful lie. You're not pushing the thought away. You're refusing to worship it. Think about how you treat a friend who talks badly about themselves. If they said, I'm worthless, you wouldn't reply. Yes, accurate. You'd say, hey, that's not fair. Look at everything you've done, everything you've survived. Somehow, all that kindness disappears when you talk to yourself. Zen practice, in a very real sense, is learning to be your own loyal friend, not by repeating cheesy phrases you don't believe, but by refusing to abandon yourself in your hardest moments, especially at night, that's when most people abandon themselves the most. Self-compassion isn't letting yourself off the hook. It's letting yourself be human. If you snapped at someone today, compassion doesn't say, "That's fine, no problem." It says, "That wasn't how I wanted to show up, and I understand why I was that stressed." From there, you can apologize, repair, and learn. Shame freezes you in place. Compassion lets you move differently tomorrow. When you bring this lens to your whole past, your story stops being, "I ruined everything," and becomes, "I was learning, painfully, in public." And aren't we all? You can even rewrite how you tell your own life story. Instead of, "I wasted years with the wrong people," you might say, "I spent years learning what my heart really needs." Instead of, "I keep failing," you say, "I keep trying, even scared, even tired." It's not about sugarcoating. It's about seeing the full picture. Zen doesn't erase your scars. It sees them as proof that the wound has closed. Every time you shift your narrative a little, your nervous system relaxes a little. And a relaxed nervous system sleeps very differently from a condemned one. Here's a simple, contrary, powerful practice for bedtime. The kind review. Instead of replaying the day as a trial against yourself, you watch it as a compassionate mentor. You see moments where you struggled and silently say, "That was hard, and you did what you could." You notice where you did well, even in small ways, and say, "That mattered, even if nobody saw it." You don't excuse harmful behavior, but you context it in your humanity. The goal is not to declare yourself perfect, but to stop declaring yourself hopeless. You close the day with a verdict more aligned with truth. Incomplete, but sincerely trying. Zen also invites you to recognize something important. You are not finished. Whatever age you are, your story didn't freeze there. Your brain can still change, your heart can still soften, your patterns can still shift. Neuroscience calls it plasticity. Zen simply calls it practice. Every night you treat yourself with a bit more kindness. You're carving a new groove in your mind. At first it feels strange, even fake, like writing with your non-dominant hand. With time, it begins to feel natural. Humor can help soften identity too. When you hear your mind say, "Here I go again. I always mess this up," you can gently smile. "Oh, look, it's that old program running again. Version 1998, still installed." You're not mocking yourself. You're mocking the outdated script. It's like watching an old commercial and thinking, "Wow, I can't believe we bought that." Once you see your identity stories as old commercials, it's easier not to buy them again. You can browse new beliefs without rushing to checkout. From a Zen angle, your true self isn't dramatic. It doesn't walk around glowing or floating off the floor. It's simple, quiet, and surprisingly ordinary, like the you that appears when you're relaxed and not performing. The you who laughs at small things, comforts others without overthinking, enjoys a moment without filming it. That version of you is not a rare accident. It's a glimpse of who you are without fear shouting in your ear. Night is a perfect time to remember that person, because in the dark, nobody's watching. You can stop acting. When you begin to loosen your old identity, something beautiful happens with sleep. You no longer go to bed as the failure, the burden, or the broken one. You go to bed as a human being in process, which is what everyone secretly is. Instead of trying to solve your whole life by 2 a.m., you allow yourself to rest inside the process. Zen-inspired. You trust that transformation doesn't happen in one night, but sleep is part of it. It's like letting the dough rest so the bread can rise. You are allowed to rise slowly too. And as this gentler vision of yourself takes root, another question naturally appears in the background. If I am not only my past, not only my wounds, not only my labels, then how do I want to live from here? What kind of mornings, relationships, and choices match this truer version of me? Zen won't answer that with a rigid checklist. It will invite you to discover it step by step. The same awareness that watches your thoughts at night can also guide your actions by day. But that bridge between inner identity and outer life deserves its own slow, careful walk. And that's where we'll quietly start heading next, one small step at a time. When you begin to see yourself differently on the inside, the outside world doesn't magically rearrange overnight. Your boss doesn't suddenly become enlightened. Your family doesn't start speaking like monks. And traffic still behaves like traffic. But something subtle changes, the way you show up. Zen doesn't ask you to move to a cave. It asks you to bring this quieter, right to you, deep, kinder version of you into your real relationships. Into the kitchen, into the office, into WhatsApp, into those late-night conversations that sometimes end in tears. The true test of inner peace isn't how you feel alone in your room, but how you respond when someone pushes your buttons. And oh, they will push them. Imagine you wake up a little more rooted in that not broken version of yourself. You still get annoyed. You still get impatient. You're still human. But there's a half-second gap now, a little pause before you react. That gap is pure gold. That's where Zen lives in everyday life. In that split second, you can either follow the old script or choose a new line. You can sigh instead of explode, ask a question instead of assuming, walk away instead of escalating. Small choices, big consequences over time. Think of your relationships like a dance. For years, maybe decades, you and certain people have been dancing the same choreography. They say X, you feel Y. You respond with Z, and boom, the same argument, the same hurt, the same silence. Zen doesn't necessarily change them. It changes your steps. You start noticing, oh, here comes the part where I usually shout, or shut down, or blame. And just like that, you're no longer dancing on autopilot. You're improvising from a wiser, calmer place. Let's say someone close to you sends a passive-aggressive message. Your usual internal voice screams, disrespect, attack, defend. But your new practice invites you to pause and ask, what might they be afraid of right now? You're not excusing their behavior. You're expanding the frame. Instead of seeing an enemy, you see a human tangled in their own pain. That simple shift turns your heart from a fist into an open hand. And conversations feel different when one person's heart isn't clenched. You can try this in very ordinary situations. You're at the table. Someone criticizes how you did something. Again. The old you feels the flame rise and wants to fight for dignity. The practicing you takes one conscious breath, feels your feet on the floor, and listens a little longer. Maybe you answer, I hear what you're saying, and here's how it feels from my side. No drama, no sermon, just honest presence. That kind of response often surprises people more than any clever comeback. Zen relationships are not about becoming a doormat. They're about learning the art of firm softness. You stay kind, but you don't abandon your truth. You say, "No, I won't accept being spoken to like that," without poisoning yourself with hatred. You can hang up the phone or step back from a conversation while still wishing the other person peace. That's what boundaries look like when rooted in awareness instead of rage. They protect you without turning you into what hurt you. One powerful practice is what I call seeing the child behind the adult. The next time someone close to you overreacts, imagine the younger version of them behind their eyes. Not to excuse harmful behavior, but to understand the depth of their fear or insecurity. Often, the loudest adults are carrying the quietest unhealed children. When you see that, your response naturally becomes less cruel and more precise. You can still say, "This is not okay," but the energy behind it is cleaner. You defend your dignity without stabbing theirs. You can also bring Zen into the way you listen. Most people don't listen. They reload. They're just waiting for the other person to pause so they can fire their opinion back. Zen listening is different. You listen as if the other person might say something that truly changes you. You're not in court trying to win a case. You're in a living room trying to understand a heart. Ask yourself, what are they really needing or fearing beneath these words? That question alone can turn arguments into bridges. Of course, there will be days when you fail miserably at this. You'll snap. You'll say what you regret. You'll send the text you wish you could recall. Zen doesn't cross your name off the list when that happens. It simply invites you to see the moment clearly, apologize when needed, and learn from it. You might say, "I lost it back there. I'm working on responding differently next time." That humility is itself a form of practice, and it often softens the very people you thought would never change. Your imperfection doesn't cancel your path. It proves you're really walking it. Try experimenting with micro-kindness as a daily discipline. One extra thank you, one patient answer, one message checking on someone with no agenda. These acts might seem small compared to your big life problems, but they slowly rewire how you see yourself. Not as a walking disaster, but as someone capable of adding softness to a hard world. And the funny thing is, those small kindnesses boomerang back. They change the tone of the spaces you live in, and therefore the atmosphere you sleep in. You're not just receiving energy from the world, you're shaping it. Also, notice how you talk about people when they're not around. Gossip, constant criticism, replaying how wrong they are, it all keeps your own nervous system on high alert. It's like drinking poison to prove someone else is toxic. Zen would invite you to reduce this diet little by little, not through guilt, but through curiosity. How do I feel after 5 minutes of complaining versus 5 minutes of honest reflection? You'll feel the difference in your body. One drains, the other clears. And clarity, again, is a friend of deep sleep. Sometimes, the bravest Zen move in a relationship is creating distance. Not as revenge, but as protection and honesty. You're allowed to step back from people who repeatedly trample your peace. You can love someone from far away, with a heart that says, "I wish you healing, but not at the cost of my sanity." That too is compassion. Compassion that includes you, not just them. And ironically, space sometimes is the only thing that allows new dynamics to grow later. But forcing that timing is never your job. As you bring this awareness into your social world, your identity shifts once again. You're no longer just the person things happen to. You're a participant in how energy circulates in your circles. You become that one friend, sibling, partner, or co-worker who calms the room instead of inflaming it. And no, it doesn't mean you'll never be overwhelmed again. It just means you've tasted a different way of relating. And that taste is hard to forget. It's the flavor of being aligned with your deeper self, even when others are not. And that flavor lingers long after the conversation ends. At night, your relationships don't disappear. They climb into bed with you as thoughts, memories, and imaginary dialogues. But when you've practiced showing up differently during the day, the nighttime replay is softer too. You're less haunted by, "I should have destroyed them," and more guided by, "I'm glad I didn't betray myself." That's a quieter kind of movie to fall asleep to. You still care about people, of course, maybe even more. But your care is no longer a highway for self-abandonment. It's a path where you walk side by side with yourself, hand in hand, not left behind. The beautiful part is that you don't need every relationship to change for your life to feel different. Sometimes, changing how you show up in just one or two key connections already shifts your inner climate. A kinder conversation here, a firmer boundary there, one honest apology, one less explosion. These small adjustments echo inside you long after the moment passes. And as your relationships slowly reflect this new way of being, your days feel less like constant battles. Less battle by day means less war in your head by night. And that opens space for an even deeper question. How does this new way of living fit into the larger story of your life? You don't live in a monastery. You live in a world of bills, deadlines, notifications, and people asking, "Did you see my message?" So if Zen can't walk with you into your job, your studies, your responsibilities, it stays just a pretty theory. Real peace has to survive email inboxes and meetings that should have been emails. It has to survive traffic, noise, and the days when everything goes off script. The good news is that your daily life is not an obstacle to Zen. It's the training ground. Each task, each pressure, each annoyance is like a weight at the gym for your awareness. You're not escaping life to practice. You're practicing inside life. Think about your work, whatever form it takes. Maybe you're in an office, in a classroom, at home, on the road, or in between jobs. Most people treat work like a waiting room, a place to endure until real life starts later. But Zen quietly asks, what if this is already your real life? Every email you answer, every dish you wash, every client you help. That's you trading time for something. The question is, are you present for the trade, or are you giving away your hours without ever really inhabiting them? Imagine you take just one task tomorrow and decide to make it a Zen practice. It could be answering 3 emails, folding laundry, or preparing a report. Before you start, you take one slow breath and feel your feet on the ground. Then you do that task with the same attention you brought to your breath at night. No rushing to finish. No juggling 5 other things. Just, when I do this, I only do this. You might be surprised by how different it feels, even if the task is boring. Sometimes the boredom comes less from the task and more from our divided attention. There's a story about a monk who became a cook in the monastery kitchen. At first, he complained, "I came here for enlightenment, not to peel potatoes." His teacher laughed and said, "Then peel them with your whole heart and see what happens." So he tried, slowly, clumsily, paying attention to each potato, each slice, each wash of the knife. Months later, he realized that his kitchen had become his meditation hall. The sound of chopping, the heat of the stove, the rush of serving others, it all became part of his practice. He didn't escape the kitchen to find Zen. He found Zen right there, with dirty hands. Your kitchen might be a computer, a car, a cash register, or a classroom. You might deal with customers, patients, students, kids, numbers, or endless documents. Zen doesn't care about the prestige of your work. It cares about the presence in your work. You can be spiritually asleep in a corner office or quietly awake while cleaning floors. Awakening isn't about the title on your badge, but the quality of your attention. Ask yourself gently, where do I feel most absent during my day? That's exactly where your practice wants to begin. You might think, if my job really matched my purpose, then I'd be present. But Zen flips that. Often, presence is what reveals your purpose, not the other way around. When you bring full awareness to what you already do, you start noticing what energizes you and what drains you. You see where your natural gifts show up, even in small ways. Maybe you calm people without trying, organize chaos without drama, explain things clearly, or bring humor into tense spaces. These tiny traces are like breadcrumbs pointing toward your deeper calling, but you only see them if you're really there. Try this. At the end of a workday, instead of only asking, "Was I productive?" ask, "Where did I feel most alive today?" Maybe it was talking one-on-one with a colleague, helping a confused customer, or creating something from scratch. Write down one moment each day where you felt even a little aligned, even for 30 seconds. Over weeks, a pattern emerges like a picture developing in a dark room. That pattern often says more about your purpose than any personality test. Purpose stops being a mystical secret and becomes a series of clues inside your own experience. Zen just helps you notice them. Of course, some jobs are deeply misaligned with your values. There are environments so toxic that your body tenses up just thinking about Monday. Zen doesn't ask you to spiritually bypass this or pretend it's all fine. What it asks is that you see clearly, without denial. This place is harming my spirit in the long run. From that clarity, you can begin to plan, not impulsively, but consciously, how to transition. Maybe it's learning a new skill, saving money, building a side project, or networking quietly. Peace doesn't always mean staying where you are. Sometimes it means planning your exit with wisdom. While you're still in a difficult situation, you can practice micro-protection of your inner space. You may not control your boss or clients, but you can control how often you return to your breath. You can put small anchors in your day. A reminder on your phone saying, inhale, exhale. A short walk. 3 conscious breaths in the bathroom. You can learn to notice when your shoulders are at your ears and gently roll them down. You can stretch your hands, relax your jaw, soften your stomach. These are not dramatic acts, but they are acts of quiet rebellion against constant tension. You're telling your system, even here, I will not abandon myself. Technology is another arena where your Zen practice will be tested. Your phone is both a tool and a thief, useful, but always ready to steal your attention. Zen doesn't say, throw it away. It says, use it on purpose. You might decide not to touch your phone for the first and last 15 minutes of the day. You might turn off notifications that drag you into every tiny digital storm. You might choose certain hours as sacred off-screen time, even if it's just while you eat. These small choices are you reclaiming your mind from the endless scroll. Money, too, can become a quiet Zen teacher, not by turning you into a monk with no possessions, but by inviting you to see clearly how you relate to it. Do you spend to numb, to impress, to avoid feelings, to chase a sense of worth? Or can money become simply energy you direct toward what truly matters to you? You might start asking, does this purchase bring real peace or just momentary distraction? Over time, your spending becomes more aligned with your deeper values, and that alignment itself is a subtle form of freedom. Zen also changes how you deal with time pressure. Instead of repeating, "I don't have time," you begin to say, "I will decide how to use this hour." Some things you truly can't change: school schedules, deadlines, responsibilities. But within that structure, there's more freedom than you think. You can choose to do one thing at a time instead of living in fake multitasking. You can choose to rest for 5 minutes instead of pushing into pure exhaustion. You can choose to say no a little more often and yes a little more consciously. One powerful daily practice is what I call the mindful transition. We often slide from one activity to another without any pause. Work to home, call to call, screen to screen. Your nervous system never gets the memo that one chapter ended and another began. So you arrive at bed with the whole day still buzzing in your body. Instead, try adding 10-second transitions. One breath when you close your laptop. One breath before entering your home. One breath before answering a message. You silently say, "That was then. This is now." Those tiny resets keep your day from becoming one long, tangled knot. Bit by bit, your outer life and your inner practice begin to align. You're still busy, still human, still sometimes chaotic, but less at war with yourself. You no longer dream of escaping your life to find peace. You start discovering peace inside the very life you have. Tasks turn into practice. People turn into teachers. Challenges turn into training. And every small act of awareness during the day softens your night. Because when your days feel more honest and intentional, your pillow feels less like a courtroom and more like a safe place to land. From there, an even wider circle of practice quietly begins to appear, beyond your room, beyond your schedule, reaching out to the whole world you're part of. There's a moment on certain nights when the world outside your window goes quiet. The cars thin out, the neighbors settle, even the city noise seems to breathe a little slower. In that silence, it's easier to remember something we often forget during the day. You are not just a separate little unit trying to survive, you're part of something bigger. Zen says you're like a wave that forgot it was the ocean, busy comparing itself to other waves. But at night, when distractions finally loosen their grip, the ocean feeling returns. Even if just for a second, you sense, "I belong to more than my problems." Think about the last time you were really moved by nature. Maybe it was a sunset that painted the whole sky for free. Maybe it was the sound of rain while you lay safe in bed. Maybe it was a tree you walk past every day, suddenly noticed in bloom. In those moments, your identity softens and your problems shrink a little. You're still you, with real worries, but you're also part of this vast, breathing world. Zen calls that shift waking up to interconnection. Your breath is the simplest proof that you're not separate. You inhale what the trees and plants exhale, and they inhale what you exhale back. Every breath is a partnership, a silent exchange of life that never makes the news. When you lie in bed, following your breath, you're literally in conversation with the earth. Not in poetic theory, but in raw biology. That alone can be deeply soothing, realizing you're held inside a living system, not floating in emptiness. You're not an isolated mistake. You're a thread in a much larger tapestry. Zen teachers often went to the mountains and forests not to escape people, but to remember reality. Mountains don't care about your resume, your following, or your bank account. They mirror something older and steadier inside you. When you can't visit a mountain, you can still bring a bit of nature into your life. A plant on your desk, a sky check in the morning, a short walk without headphones. These tiny contacts with the natural world act like spiritual vitamins. They quietly restore something your nervous system has been missing. Even animals can become unexpected Zen teachers. A cat that sleeps deeply in a sunbeam without apologizing for resting. A dog fully present to every smell, every sound, every greeting. They're not planning 5 years ahead, nor replaying yesterday's mistakes. They inhabit the moment with a kind of innocence we secretly envy. You don't need to imitate them in everything, but you can learn from their simplicity. Right now is enough is a lesson they live without words. Your relationship with the world isn't only with trees and animals, it's with humans everywhere. The clothes you're wearing right now touched many hands before they reached you. Someone sewed, someone packed, someone drove, someone stacked them on a shelf. The device you're using came from metal's mind, designs drafted, factories humming. You are supported by an invisible army of strangers every single day. Zen awareness helps you see this hidden network and feel less alone. You're not an isolated life form. You're the center of a web you didn't realize you were in. When you recognize this web, gratitude stops being a cliché and becomes a clear perception. You realize that you've never eaten a truly solo meal in your life. Farmers, truck drivers, cooks, cashiers, even the rain and sun all sat at the table with you. So when you whisper, "Thank you," before you sleep, you're not just being polite. You're tuning into a real, ongoing exchange between you and the world. That sense of being held by a larger fabric calms the fear of being on your own. And fear is one of the biggest thieves of sleep. Zen also invites you to notice the other side of connection: impact. Just as countless actions support you, your actions ripple out too. A kind word can quietly change someone's entire day. A harsh message can echo in their head at night, the way words echo in yours. When you really see this, responsibility stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like sacred power. You are not powerless. You influence the emotional weather of the spaces you enter. That realization can gently upgrade how you choose to move through the world. There's a story of a Zen student who asked, "How can I save all beings? It seems impossible." The teacher smiled and said, "Start with the one being in front of you. That might be your child, your partner, your colleague, or even the stranger at the checkout. It might be yourself in the mirror on a really bad day. You don't need a global project to live a life of compassion. You just need to treat the next interaction as if it matters, which it does. The world is changed one nervous system at a time, starting with yours. Caring for the world doesn't mean carrying the whole world on your shoulders. You don't have to fix every crisis, sign every petition, join every cause. Zen asks a clearer question. What genuinely calls you, and what can you realistically sustain? Maybe it's being a calmer parent, a more present teacher, a fairer manager. Maybe it's reducing waste at home, supporting one charity, or being there for lonely people around you. Your contribution doesn't have to be loud to be real. Quiet goodness counts, especially in a world addicted to noise. In the same way, you can practice eco-zen in very simple ways: turning off lights, wasting less food, reusing what you can, choosing more thoughtfully. Not from guilt, but from a sense of friendship with the earth that houses you. You start asking, how can I live here like a respectful guest instead of a careless tourist? This doesn't make you perfect. Perfection is not the point. It just aligns your outer actions a little more with your inner values. That alignment itself is a source of peace. At night, when you lie there thinking about the world's problems, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. Wars, injustice, climate, inequality, too big for one person's heart. Zen doesn't ask you to numb out or to drown in it all. It invites you to hold both truths at once. The world is wounded, and I can still be a channel of healing where I stand. You breathe in the pain you see, breathe out a sincere wish for relief, starting with your own life. This simple inner gesture is called compassion in action, even if nobody sees it. And compassion, unlike anxiety, actually helps you sleep. The more you recognize your interconnection, the less isolated you feel in your struggles. Pain stops being a punishment targeted at you and starts looking like a shared human condition. Everyone you pass during the day carries their own secret battles. Knowing that doesn't remove your burdens, but it changes the story you tell yourself about them. Instead of, "Why me?" it slowly becomes, "Why not me, too?" among all these other hearts. From that place, you're less likely to hate life for being hard, and more likely to walk it with tenderness. For yourself, for others, for the world that shapes and holds us all. And when you drift toward sleep with this sense of belonging, something deep inside relaxes. You're no longer a lone warrior fighting endless invisible enemies. You're a participant in a vast, imperfect, but still astonishing web of life. Tomorrow, you'll wake up again with small chances to care, to notice, to respond differently. Those chances are not random. They're invitations. Invitations from the same universe that gave you breath, body, and this strange, beautiful opportunity to exist. And underneath all of that lies one last mystery we avoid, but can't escape. One that, surprisingly, can make life gentler when we finally turn to face it. There comes a time in every life when the mirror starts telling a different story. The face is the same, but the light in the eyes has seen more storms and more sunrises. For a long time, we pretend we're made of something other than change. We act as if aging is an error and uncertainty is a glitch in the system. Zen quietly whispers the opposite. Change is not the problem. Our resistance is. It's like trying to stop waves with your hands. You only end up more exhausted and wet. Peace begins the day you stop fighting the tide and learn to float. Think of how many endings in your life weren't really endings. The school you thought you'd miss forever. The relationship you thought you'd never survive. The job you thought defined you. The version of yourself you swore you'd always be. Some of those chapters closed and it hurt. Sometimes deeply. But looking back, you can see how each ending secretly carried a beginning under its coat. Like a hard winter that quietly prepares the soil for spring. Zen invites you to trust that rhythm even when you can't yet see the flowers. Aging is one of the clearest mirrors of impermanence, and also one of the most feared. We live in a world that worships before and after, pictures, and filters away wrinkles. Yet, the people we often respect most have faces carved by time, not smoothed by denial. Every line tells a story the young simply haven't lived long enough to read. You don't have to love every sign of aging, but you can learn to bow to the wisdom it represents. Instead of asking, "How do I stay forever young?" you might ask, "How do I age fully alive?" That question opens a much kinder path. Imagine sitting with an elderly person who has truly made peace with time. They still have aches, losses, and memories that sting. But there is a softness in their gaze, like someone who stopped wrestling the river. They'll tell you, "I wasted so many years worrying about things that didn't matter." They rarely regret wrinkles. They regret the love they didn't give, the risks they didn't take. Zen learning means borrowing that wisdom now, not waiting until your last chapter. You start living today like someone who knows time is precious, not guaranteed. One practical way to befriend change is to practice small deaths every day, finishing your day's work and actually letting it be over instead of dragging it to bed, ending a conversation and not rehearsing it 20 times in your head, allowing old versions of yourself to retire with gratitude instead of dragging them around as proof. You might even say quietly, "That moment is gone. Thank you." Next. It sounds simple, but it trains your heart to release instead of cling. So when bigger changes come, they don't feel quite as impossible. Uncertainty is another guest we try hard to lock out of the house. We want guarantees. In health, in love, in money, in the future. But if we're honest, we've never truly had guarantees. Just comforting predictions. Zen doesn't offer you a weather forecast for life. It offers you an umbrella of awareness. You learn to walk under skies that change, knowing you can't control the clouds. Instead of demanding certainty, you strengthen your ability to stand in "I don't know." That's where true courage quietly lives. Think of times when life surprised you in a good way. The friend you met by accident. The opportunity you hadn't planned. The insight you never scheduled. Those moments came from the very same unknown you're afraid of. The mystery isn't only home to disasters, it's also where miracles are born. When you remember that, the unknown feels less like a dark pit and more like a deep ocean. You still might feel nervous about swimming, but you're less sure the water is all danger. There might be beauty there too, beauty you can't yet imagine. One powerful night practice is to talk honestly with the unknown before you sleep. Instead of trying to solve every problem in your head, you whisper, "I don't know," and that's okay for tonight. You picture placing your unsolved questions on an imaginary shelf. They're not thrown away. They're simply not invited into the bed with you. You give yourself permission to rest even while life is unfinished, which it always is. This isn't irresponsibility. It's wisdom about your limits. The body cannot rest if the mind refuses to stop playing manager of the universe. The deepest unknown, of course, is death. Most of us keep it just out of frame, like a piece of furniture we pretend not to see. But the more we avoid it, the more quietly it runs the show with fear. Zen doesn't ask you to obsess over death, but to stop pretending you're the exception. When you really absorb, "One day this life will end," something paradoxical happens. You don't become gloomier. You become more awake. Small things get sweeter. Fake things get harder to tolerate. You might try a gentle contemplation. Once in a while, imagine looking back from the end of your life. Not to frighten yourself, but to clarify what truly matters. Ask, what would I wish I had done more of? What would I care less about? Most people don't say, "I wish I had scrolled more," or "I wish I had won more arguments." They say, "I wish I had loved better, rested more, worried less, and been more present." Zen practice is your chance to shift toward that now, not in the last 10 minutes. So your future self doesn't have to grieve quite so many wasted years. Aging and change also invite you to simplify. You begin to see that carrying grudges, competitions, and endless comparisons is just too heavy. It's like packing bricks in your backpack for a hike that's already uphill. You start putting down what you no longer need. Old resentments, fake obligations, roles that don't fit. Simplifying doesn't mean having a tiny life. It means having a truer one. Less noise outside makes it easier for your inner voice to be heard. And that voice is often much wiser than the anxious thoughts on the surface. Humor, too, becomes a quiet ally as you age and change. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is laugh, gently, at your own illusions, at how certain you once were, at how tightly you held things that eventually slipped away anyway. Not a bitter laugh, but a soft, "Ah, I see now." Zen doesn't want you grim and serious. It wants you real and awake. A little lightness helps the heart bend instead of break when life shifts again. And life, you've probably noticed, always shifts again. In the end, embracing impermanence doesn't mean liking every change. It means recognizing that clinging doesn't stop the seasons from turning. You let yourself grieve what's gone without trying to glue it back. You let yourself feel afraid of what's coming without pretending you're made of stone. And in the middle of that honest trembling, something steady appears. Awareness itself. The part of you that has been here watching every change, from your first memory until tonight. That awareness is the quiet friend you've had all along. When you rest in that awareness, aging looks less like a countdown and more like a deepening. Uncertainty looks less like an enemy and more like the raw material of new possibilities. You're still human, still scared sometimes, still sad when things end. But you're no longer shocked that life behaves like life. And that lack of shock is its own kind of peace. From that peace, every new day, every new year, every new wrinkle becomes part of a bigger story. A story that doesn't end with you, but certainly passes right through your heart. And as you lie there, between the day that just ended and the day that hasn't arrived yet, you're standing in a sacred doorway. Behind you, everything that has changed and shaped you. Ahead of you, everything that still waits in mystery. Right now, the only place you can actually breathe, choose, soften, and begin again. This present moment becomes the meeting point of past, future, fear, and possibility. It's where Zen lives, where sleep deepens, where life quietly reorganizes itself from the inside out. And from here, all the threads we touched, breath, story, emotion, identity, relationships, the world and change, can finally weave into one simple invitation: to live and rest as if your own heart were a temple. So here you are, at the end of this journey, still breathing, still feeling, still human. Nothing outside you has magically rearranged itself. The bills are still there. The past is still the past. The future is still unwritten. But I hope something inside has shifted, even if just a little. Maybe your thoughts feel a bit less like enemies and more like weather. Maybe your emotions feel less like verdicts and more like visitors. Maybe you've started to sense that quiet, steady awareness behind it all. That part of you that's never been broken. The real question now is not, did I enjoy this? But what will I do with this? Will you take even one practice into tomorrow? One conscious breath before you grab your phone? One moment of kindness toward yourself when you feel anxious? One small pause to truly listen to someone instead of rehearsing your answer? Tiny choices, repeated, are how lives change. You don't need a dramatic transformation overnight. You need dozens of soft, honest returns to yourself. Ask yourself, gently, what is one thing I'm ready to stop doing to myself? Is it the constant self-criticism? The habit of replaying old scenes before sleep? The belief that I must fix everything and everyone before I deserve rest? And what is one thing I'm ready to start doing? Maybe it's placing a hand on your chest when you're overwhelmed and saying, "I'm here with you." Maybe it's turning off screens a little earlier, or walking slower, or saying no when your body is screaming for rest. These are not small gestures. They are acts of deep self-respect. You've seen, through these stories and teachings, that peace is not about living a life without storms. It's about discovering the stillness at the bottom of the ocean while the surface waves rise and fall. Are you willing to keep exploring that stillness, even when the day is loud and messy? Are you willing to treat your heart as a temple instead of a battlefield? Are you willing to see your struggles not as proof that you're failing, but as invitations to wake up more fully? These are the questions that can quietly redirect an entire lifetime. If this journey touched you, even in a small way, don't let it end here. Let it ripple into your routines, your conversations, your choices. And if you'd like to keep walking this path with me, learning more about Zen, sleep, peace, and a joyful mind, I'd love for you to stay close. Subscribe to this channel, turn on the notifications, and come back whenever you need a place to breathe and feel understood. Not because numbers matter, but because you matter, and your practice deepens when you return. Before we close, take one more slow breath with me. Inhale through the nose, feeling the air travel all the way down. Hold it gently for a moment, and exhale slowly, letting the weight of this day melt just a little. Whatever happens after this video, remember, you can return to this breath anytime. You can return to this presence, this kindness, this simple awareness of being alive. Your life will still have storms, but now you know where to find the calm. Thank you for spending this time here, for your trust, and for your courage in meeting yourself more honestly. May you sleep more softly tonight, wake more joyful tomorrow, and walk through your days with a heart that remembers. Peace is not somewhere else, with someone else at some other time. It is here, in you, waiting every moment you choose to come home. Good night, and keep walking this path, one gentle step at a time.